Yo, how are you doing, folks? Welcome to episode 112 of the Simpa Life Podcast. A long time no see, folks. It's been, a good 3 weeks according to my watch. I do apologise for the extra time that was needed there. Obviously, went away to span a bit. I tried to arrange some recordings for in between to make sure that I could release them while I've been away. But unfortunately, the guests that I've been trying to get are exceptionally busy individuals. One of them who would potentially be, is a bit of a clue, a wicked guest. We're kind of pushing back the date at the minute. We're talking about next week, the week after. So I'm trying to obviously make that happen. Got a recurring guest, one of our most popular guests, in fact, the most downloaded episode, will be coming back on for a catch-up very soon as well next month, that being Melanie Sykes. We have some interesting other guests in conversation at the minute, but obviously we're deep into kind of event season. So April coming up, there's going to be quite a lot. Obviously got like Breaking Convention. There's a couple of events I'll be attending as well, speaking at London, the launch of Drug Science Student event, which I think is quite interesting. And I'll be down in, can I announce this? I don't know if I can announce this. I'll be in Bristol, but I don't know if I can tell you why I'm in Bristol yet at the end of the month as well. But there's some interesting things happening, folks. Obviously, you've got Clark French's event as well, the Medicinal Cannabis Summit down in Brighton. I shall be there as well. I think that has also been made public information. So I'm not really revealing too much here. But yeah, we've got a hell of a month coming up. Also, 420. How can I forget it is 420? We also have Bicycle Day, which we'll try and do a video on them to try and get a relevant guest to discuss that, obviously, all about LSD. So yeah, a hell of an interesting month, which I think leads us on quite well to today's guest, who, saying there's a good segue there, folks. I may be out of the hot seat for a few weeks, but I'm not getting rusty. So yeah, today's guest, who is a plant medicine and psychedelic advocate, facilitator, and practitioner. That's my wording, because they're so humble that when discussing this, we couldn't quite figure out an intro. So I'm hoping this next podcast gives you a really good idea as to who this individual is, who is going by the name Pat. So how are you doing, Pat?
Well, how are you?
I'm good. I'm really happy to finally be able to record this podcast with yourself. Obviously, I think I've had a full audio failure, a full camera failure. So yeah, hence the reason, folks, probably things are looking a bit weird. I apologize if anyone's got epilepsy. I might actually have to put a warning on this, because when I move, it judders the light. It's a fancy camera. I haven't figured out how it works yet. Plugged it in this morning to facilitate this conversation, damn it. And you're going to enjoy it, folks. So yeah, I'm buzzing to be able to facilitate this conversation. I really hope our listeners, gain some good insight and learn a lot today.
Good.
Excellent.
Yeah, it's nice to be here. It's nice. I'm just hanging out in the yurt. I've got a busy weekend. So it's nice to stop.
Yeah.
I'm forced to stop. I've been stopped for the most of the start of the week, and then it's like the mad rush, getting ready for the weekend, and I'm sort of writing about that at the moment. So it's nice to
take the time to reflect.
Yeah,
man, it's important. So, where do you join us from today? You look like you've got quite an interesting background.
This is where I sleep. It's a yurt in Scotland. I've been in here since I was locked down in a flat in an apartment in Lima. After some pretty heavy medicine work, I found myself in Airbnb to Airbnb, waiting for a humanitarian flight home. There was a flight coming up almost every second day, and then they were falling to bits, and it was just a sort of crazy time. And I had come from quite a prolonged period in a very serene environment. I was quite deep in the jungle for a while, and I sort of, with hindsight now, know that I reset quite a lot of my brain chemistry in there. And so loud cities and sort of stressful external noises became something that irritated me, whereas, you know, I'd grown up in the city and been exposed to sirens and nonsense forever. And it hadn't bothered me, but going into that experience and really getting in about some really powerful brain medicine, you know, and then being locked down in a wilderness, you know, just a wilderness where, you know, I felt really scared, and kind of the decision was made. I had some pretty wonderful things happen back home while I was away, and the opportunity came to live in a natural building, which is what I think I'll continue to sleep in a natural building if I can. And so that's where I am. It's my spaceship. It's my happy place, you know. I like it here. It's where we do some work with others. Well, as I say, we've got a men's group this weekend. 4 guys coming together to go over some things in their lives, you know, and try and connect with some things that, you know, perhaps we had disconnected from. So yeah, that's what we're doing here this weekend.
Wow. Yeah, man. So obviously this was it's Lima in Peru, yeah?
Correct.
Yeah, so it was during obviously was this the first pandemic wave of sort of COVID?
Yeah, I mean, so I had embarked on a trip for which I didn't realize how big a part of Peru that was going to be, you know. But then the world stopped, right? Or that's what it felt like. The world stopped. It changed. It became quite not a great integration environment for for medicine, for sure.
Did the lockdown occur after your sort of experiences and the work that you'd done?
During.
Man, it's got to be quite a trip, like literally sort of in the old parlance of feeling that, because obviously for people that haven't gone through these kind of experiences, how primal, how archaic and all encapsulating it is of an experience to then see the world changing in ways that are not recognizable, but that is what the world actually is. Must have had that extra layer of just woof, you know? I think now, knowing what I know now, I might not have made a dash for home. I might have tried to do something slightly differently. The lockdown so I was staying in a community in the jungle, but the lockdown in the nearest city, which you would have to go through if there was any flights, you know, it was a military lockdown. You weren't allowed out on a Sunday. There was a curfew, a night curfew. You know, it was 4:00. No out on a Sunday. You know, it was and it was being enforced by, you know, overworked young kids with big weapons, and it kind of felt a bit of an alien environment. You know, there's not a lot. The hospitals were failing there. You know, really failing. You know, and COVID was on the streets. It was different. It felt for me, it felt like a hostile place, you know. Yeah, I wonder how much of that is sort of added to as well with, like you said, because the work of a lot of these sort of plant medicines, you know, entheogenic compounds, seems to work on shifting us out of that default mode network or in the old parlance of creating sort of ego death. And that I always use it as almost like, I think I've discussed it, I can't remember who I was discussing it with previously, like sand on a beach. And sort of the great ingrained thoughts are like water running back into the ocean, and it creates these grooves. But then just a good wave comes over and all of the sand is leveled again. And then its conduits and tension creates those new grooves again. And so not having the space to integrate that has certain familiarity to it. Obviously, being a foreign country and whatever was quite different in that essence. But then, like I said, coupled with this sense of, because it was a palpable sense at the time of apocalyptica. It was like the end of the world. People truly felt, for those first few weeks at least, that like, shit, we don't actually know.
Yeah. I mean, a huge part of my understanding now and the whole direction that we are going with this work is about that imprinting that we're talking about. You know, my experiences that I had, that I've had to recover from. You know, I mean, I'm still recovering from the panic of the panic of being in that vibration while, you know, I should have been in a much more serene environment because of the amount of work had been done and maybe too much work. You know, I was having experiences during a workshop I was doing in the jungle where I was learning about, you know, various types of extraction from you know, plants that contain dimethyltryptamine. And I was doing work with the plants on the pipe regularly, you know, and I was having experiences where you know, the default mode network that you're talking about, the sort of sense of self, where I could observe that system coming online in the morning. You know, it was taking longer and longer for me lying there to realize what I was, not who I was, but what I was. It was like, you know, human coming on. It was literally coming online in the morning, observing that system coming online. Just the most crazy experience to have, to understand how powerful these medicines are at destabilizing that system, and then therefore how critical the external environment for that integration is. You know, and getting on planes and us flying across to do this type of retreat holiday shit that we have going on at the moment, where people are taking a couple of weeks or a few days out of their busy lives. That's just, you know, that scares the shit out of me now. You know, it really, really does. It really scares the shit out of me. I know what is required to come back from re-traumatizing yourself like that. It's you know, people can be fine while they're with the practitioners or whatnot, but then they're in an airport, you know, one of the most stressful environments known to man, and they're having panic attacks, or, you know, it's just
well, it's most of them, even in sort of the regions that they're at, if the sort of the drugs or the plants themselves, when they're derived into compounds, are decriminalized for certain practice or certain rituals, tradition, etc., they're still highly criminalized internationally. So when you enter an airport, you're in international space, you're then moving into regions, and it's the same feeling that a lot of people probably have of going to, say, Amsterdam and experiencing liberalization of kind of the drug laws there, and then immediately going to an airport and kind of having a panic of like, how do you smell what's in my pockets? And you're kind of just suddenly hit with that visceral experience of shit, oh God. So yeah, you can imagine exactly like you've delved into the trauma, the archetypal trauma of your life, something from when you're like a child, and you do all this work through all of it, and yeah, you remove the ego identity of self, and then you step into a situation where you need that ego identity to defend yourself. You end up exactly that, in traumatizing yourself in whole new situations. You end up walking away from it. I mean, I remember, I think I did 5-6 grams on a beach once, mushrooms, and just ended up with a horrible paranoid sense and just couldn't get away from this sense, couldn't get away from the people, couldn't get away from anything. And it was beneficial in the long run in terms of its overall effect on my mental health and mood. But the trauma of that experience meant that the next time I took mushrooms, I had to almost face that. It was like I'd left it an open book, and I had to finish before I could go on to the next one. And I think too few people are considering these experiences like that. I think it's a snap, it's done. And it's the same as like growing good weed. You can grow really good fucking weed, but you can screw up the drying process. You can grow a pretty shit weed, but then get the drying and curing process on point and make it into a valuable commodity. It's the same thing with this, but integration is that curing. We need to cure that experience.
Yeah. And it's a word. It's also a word that's driving me berserk at the moment, is that word, integration.
It's a big buzzword in the space right now. All these white guys, the venture capitalists in their suits talking about integration and shit. It sends something down your spine, like there's something really wrong here. So how's it pissing you off?
I mean, what are we integrating? I mean, I just feel it's another one of these words that's becoming really fluffy, It's like, I mean, so we're in the process at the moment of trying to build an environment in which people can come and work with medicine as part of a retreat, but then can choose to stay in an environment that's built for integrating oneself. It's we're hoping to build a sort of self-sustaining environment. A sort of not closed system, but a closed system. We're in. I mean, I've been to lots of centers. I've been to lots of retreats and whatnot. And they're bringing in all the food and and it just feels like more, more of the same. What are we integrating? Most of us that are coming up. Most of us that are, finding ourselves in a position where we're wanting to work with plant medicine, or certainly it was my situation, and a lot of the people that I work with, we're in a bit of a mess, man. There's as you say, there's the people who everything seems to be going just well, and they just want these business types, that are throwing a lot of money at it, but
Yeah, it's an interesting sort of time that we're at with this, in that one man's drug is another's medicine. And obviously you've got, like, say, your business type, look at Burning Man and what that's become over the recent decade or so. That is just a retreat for people to explore these substances, have these trippy experiences, if you believe all your rumors of your orgy fucking camps and all the rest of it, and there's all kinds of fucking debauchery and madness goes on. People cosplay for a week and pretend like it's Mad Max. Then they go back to their normal lives. And it's, I think, what I'm sort of ripping at here in terms of the integration thing, it is this idea that we're pausing that default mode network. You as the child within you, the ultimate supreme you, the curious, lovable, ever hopeful thing that is you, steps beyond that trauma, beyond that indoctrination, beyond any programming, through education, through culture, through society, through conventions and norms. And you get to observe that world in that period. You get to interact with those individuals and be reminded that this is humanity, that's who we are and what it is. And then to do what next? Like, if you then have these revelatory experiences, if you understand that actually there is collectivism, there's something, it isn't to say, oh, we're going to go join the Communist Party or whatever, but it's to say that you recognize that it's in others' humanity, that the importance is there. Everything else is irrelevant. It's gravy, but this is the fucking potatoes and meat. You know what I mean? And often what I see is happening, and I agree, I'm very nervous of what I see with a lot of practitioners, self-made shamans, They're just indoctrinating these vulnerable people into a new worldview. And we've seen what happens if you take highly powerful and potentially suggestive psychedelics and give it to a narcissist and give them lots of people. I mean, that was the Manson family. If you look at what Charlie Manson did with LSD, and
exactly,
it's alarming in some ways, but others exactly the individuals like yourself that I think that you've gone through the work and you understand that it's more than just an experience. It's more than just a switch. You get to understand your unconsciousness in beyond a Freudian way, beyond a Jungian way, to truly understand that there are elements of you that aren't necessarily you. They don't represent your wants, your desires, your drives. You then have to start to consider things like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and I think that's what you're doing with your home. Is you are getting that base right, knowing that anything else that comes above that can only last if it's built on a strong foundation. And that, to me, is that integration, is that recognition that I've seen the light, and I know it's like in darkness, and a light flashes on. You know which direction to head. You have that rough idea. It's over there. I don't know how or what it is, but it's over there. I'll keep going. And then you get little flashes in other things. Maybe you pick up meditation or yoga or changing your diet or adapting something else in your life. And you'll get another little flash, and it's like, I'm getting closer. And that you just finding that space in the darkness, whereas people expect that it's a switch and you just turn the light on. And it's not that experience. If you've got that, that's a false egoic experience to me. That's the kind of people that are eating a gram and a half of fucking mushrooms and coming back and suddenly changing the whole identity. And they've adopted this facade, this psychedelic facade. They haven't learned the lesson. They haven't even heard the fucking message. They just got a bit tingly and went, this is what I want to be. This is the next thing I want to be on this. And so there's this dilution of, I think, the raw experience.
I think there's a lot of that, but then I think also a lot of that comes from. I mean, I don't know much about Burning a Man, but from what you've said and from what I know, it sounds like a psychedelic festival.
They hate, burners will hate that word. Sorry, they do not consider it a festival, but it basically is a festival.
I've heard that, I've heard that that's a term, psychedelic festival, and it's just, for me, that's just two words that don't go together.
Mm-hmm.
They just don't go together. Yeah. Psychedelics are not about that. It's just that, and that's going back to what I was saying. It's just more of the same. It's like, a psychedelic retreat. We've just modeled that on what yoga retreats look like, or what this. Do you know what I mean? It's like it's not. It's a lot more. There's a lot more potential than that. There's a lot, and environments like that, if handled the wrong way, can be really dangerous.
Mm.
It can be really, really dangerous. And if there's that many people that can do it, then yeah, yeah. This word integration at the moment seems to be, some scheduled Skype calls and whatnot, and I'm that's not what my integration looks like day to day.
That's like medical aftercare. That kind of thing. That's check-in appointments. That's all that is to me almost like insurance or legal obligations. It's not a true compassionate insight into how you're doing.
It feels like ticking boxes.
Yeah, it's bureaucratic and cold.
We're looking at what we're looking at doing, and I think what we're looking at doing kind of explains what I think are the problems in this stuff. I mean, I'm somebody that spent. I spent 28 days in a very expensive rehab at the start of my journey, and then years in abstinent recovery after that. And when I look back on that, it was like so one-dimensional. The environment, the healing environment was just so one-dimensional.
Mm.
And I just feel that, if you have the opportunity, in some cases, to be doing the long work with someone, that's the medicine's a small part of, but it's, you know, a super important part, but it's not what you're doing for 4 months, you know. What you're doing for the for 4 months is working with someone, working with medicine as deeply as they need to, and then it's a bunch of coaching afterwards, and it's coaching by an environment where you're surrounded in nature and there's not a lot of stress, and you know, you're being shown how to resolve conflict. We're literally, you've got hold of someone's microbiome if you have them. For a lot of the recovery that I'm going through as a human being is recovering my microbiome as well. You know, and when you can have someone in the environment for that amount of time, and you're teaching them, you're not only allowing them their microbiome to recover, you're giving them the skills to leave where they can ferment all sorts of foods for themselves. They're learning to grow foods. They're learning to be self-sustaining, and there's, you know, lots of communities all over the place that are crying out for people that can truly live like that. And so, you know, we're sort of looking for a place where people can come and really spend a bit of time getting to know themselves, you know, and for that not to cost a hell of a lot of money. You know, the focus is not on money. The focus is making an environment like that we can live in, that supports itself through this work, you know. Man. Yeah. And that kind of feels like the integration for me. That's what my integration looks like, being in an environment, you know, where I'm accountable to other people, where I'm accountable to myself through that, you know. I didn't learn that in medicine space, you know. I didn't learn that from experiences that I had while in medicine space. I learned that from being in a talking space with other men after that experience, after we'd shared that experience and we're able to reflect back, you know, when we're in this sort of group and all of our default mode networks have taken a little, we've been doing some stuff with rhythm, maybe with the drum, maybe with the didge, and you know, the we're all in that sort of place together, you know, and then
flow state sort of thing.
Yeah, and then when you're going into a conversation like that with each other, and people are leading the way with vulnerability, it's just such a healing place to be.
It's shown by exact. So integration is, I suppose, being co-opted by the same sort of lobbyists, vulture capitalists, as I end up describing them, whether I choose to or not. I often mean venture capitalists, but they're vultures, so fuck them. What they're seeking to do with sort of psychedelics and commodify it and turn it into an industry is that integration is some form of measurable, determined change. When I get you to tick those boxes, is your score less than it was or more than it was, dependent on the variables of that study control? And these experiences don't fit into that. I mean, I've done well over 100 LSD and DMT experiences, probably more with mushrooms, and they're all different in every. You cannot replicate. If you try to take the substance and make it replicate the substance in so much way, it goes, no. Here's the lessons you're gonna have. It's not standardizable in the same which way. You can do what obviously people like yourself do, and you create space for it, and you have a breadth of lived and living experience and knowledge that allows you to be able to facilitate, you know, the maladaptive behaviors and the behaviors of people and their actions and in that space. And by allowing people to just be accepted in that space, and then the time afterwards to not feel this kind of shame, this kind of, I shouldn't have said that, I shouldn't have done that, and to actually have the protracted period of time with those people to, as that network sort of comes back on, that you can figure out where these two experiences slot together. Because too often, most people are taking these substances kind of coming down in the traditional parlance and then getting straight back on. And one stops here and your life starts again. Whereas integration needs your life to stop. So there is, like, think of it like two colors merging. There has to be that blending, that shading, as it then moves into this new color. If the change is measurable in the way you view the world, all of your behaviors, it may not be immediate in terms of, all right, I'm going to go live in the woods in a year like yourself. But we know it in ourselves that something has been done, something has changed, a switch is done, a box has been opened, a door crept ajar in our consciousness that we know we have to deal with. And the integration, like I said, is the non-psychoactive work around these things, but because the people in charge of pushing the narrative at the minute are saying, well, it's not the plant, it's the drug. Take the thing, diet for a bit here, sleep outside here, do the thing for like 4 days and it'll change your fucking life. But then we used the analogy when we were talking, if you remember, about this podcast when we actually were trying to film it last week, about the house on fire.
It will change your life, and it will change so many people's life, and there will be so many people that have really positive experiences from that.
But it'll not be long.
But there's also, and I've witnessed it with people I've worked with. I carry tremendous, a tremendous heavy heart about a couple of people that I've worked with. That just needed so much more care.
Mm.
They needed a completely different environment, and that means that we need to treat everybody with that care, that and that environment, and some people will be able to move out of that environment quicker than others, but you just don't know when you're working with someone. You just don't know what you're going to open up for these people. You don't know when they were hurt, how they were hurt, and which part of their brain is underdeveloped, and that you're going to potentially open up some pathways for, and they're going to be in a system that they're not familiar with anymore. It's and that can be really scary. It can be really scary. I've experienced systems coming online myself in my body, literally systems that didn't work. They mustn't have worked. I hadn't experienced these things in any part of my life, not even with other substances that I'd used at these systems, and then woof, they just come online, and you're like, whoa, what's this? Really, really. I mean,
it's like defragging a computer sort of thing. I think is quite a good analogy for people. I mean, I've spoke before of the entheogenic experience at a certain threshold is like going into the control panel of your settings, and then sort of the integration, I guess, is remembering that while that panel's open, going in and I want to turn this off, turn this on, I want to work on this, I want to remember this. Certain parts of it are imprinted on you, like you say. You could go into that experience and then realize you were abused as a child, and then have to leave that experience and go back to maybe a family member or a person that do you know what I mean? You suddenly are aware of a trauma, and then that trauma is still in your life, but you've developed these defense mechanisms for it to, on the surface at least, not bother you in that environment. But then all of a sudden you're raw and vulnerable and thrust back into it. Like I was going to say before, we used the analogy of a house on fire. That what I feel that modern psychedelic practice is, we're getting people out of burning buildings, putting them out with water, and then going, oh, you're fine, you're cool, and then shoving them back in and expecting them not to burn. It's those environmental, long-term, collective things that the experience is telling us. You look at Rick Strassman's work, Stanislav Grof, many of these people that have studied these experiences, thousands upon thousands of experiences. There are these archetypal narratives, sort of, or experiences, or revelatory kind of sudden bursts of knowledge that people have going, these are the things. And it's always, as we spoke before, it's changing our environment. And as I've always said, that like drugs are not the problem, society's the problem. In a well-adjusted society, you can sell heroin at every fucking corner shop, but like Rat fucking Park, Bruce K. Alexander's experiment, like some people would try it, some wouldn't. People who were then in problematic situations, maybe develop problematic usage, but then if we had sympathetic and empathetic responses that were actually viable, then we wouldn't have these issues. It would just be another tool or commodity within society. And I think I'm scared we're missing what we're missing with cannabis now. We've commodified the fuck out of it and gone, here's a drug, it's THC, it's CBD, take these things, do this thing. It's like, well, you don't know anything. You don't know anything. I was sat with one of my scientist mates the other day for 6 hours, and this stuff we were talking about, and he just kept saying, no one's studying that. And I'm like, if we don't know that, how do we know it does X, Y, Z? And like, we don't know. But so they're selling how many billions of it? They're making what from it? And they're doing the same with psychedelics, but now they're, we spoke with Dennis McKenna about this idea of the trip without the trip, where I think the trip is the healing, the fracturing, the almost manifesting of physical energies, entities that are, the trauma of your life. I've faced not necessarily anything that I could define as with certain characteristics, but a presence, entities, energy in these experiences that I've had to overcome something in my heart or in my consciousness to overcome those moments of literally feeling like the world is ending and I am dying. That just like all encompassing. It's, if you look at like an ego death experience or whatever, it is literally a feeling of terror, true terror. And I've come through those experiences most with a realization. Something in me has gone, shine a light in that dark corner, take that back with you, go do the fucking work on it. Do you know what I mean? And it is, you come back and you spend weeks, months still over re-traumatized by it. I mean, I had an experience with fucking the NHS psychiatrist last year, the Jesus Christ, that left me in the same sort of thing. Basically did all the shit, tore all these fucking doors open and then walked away and discharged me. And it's the same sort of thing. It's that aftercare, that integration, like going, okay, now that we've got all these doors open, what doors do you want to deal with? What can we help you with? Where can we support you? How can we help you adapt your behaviors, address your behaviors, learn what you don't like about yourself, not through self-deprecation or depression or cultural pressures, the things that you actually want to grow from, the tough areas in your life you want to put that fucking work into. And
yeah. I mean, again,
it's not there. We have to build that ourselves, as you were saying. We have to do that for ourselves.
This environment, I mean, one of the things I was actually talking to a family member about this the other day, and one of the wonderful things that the treatment center gave me, this expensive treatment center, was that it allowed me to be observed 24 hours a day for, a 28-day period. And what that allowed me to do when I was trying to change so many behaviors in such a short period of time, it allowed me to have 3 or 4 meltdowns and really reveal what was going on to the people around me, and then for me to storm off and calm down. And I was away from my environment. I wasn't able to hit the fuck it button completely. I was able to come back, and the sort of radical change that's required for people who are approaching medicine work, or certainly people that were approaching it from the place that I came from, we really need an environment where you can observe someone for a prolonged period of time and until they reveal themselves to you, and then in a compassionate, supportive way, allow them to coach themselves out of that way of being. Meanwhile, having their microbiome, teaching them these things, morning meditation, but we need those, and so we have the medicine experiences, and then we need space to unravel.
It's just creating a space for it's. I think this is where spirits and the idea of like possession and things like that come from in our history. Is normal. I say normal. That's such a lauded term these days. Your average individual, neurotypical back in the day, going through life, la 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 la. Something hyper traumatic happens. Something happens. Their consciousness reacts in such a way that they develop a response to it that is trauma. They are triggered by any reminder of that experience, and to the onlooker, doesn't understand trauma, triggers any of that shit. There's no psychiatry. There's none of that shit. That person suddenly one day is possessed, their behavior changed. And whenever you approach them, they become irrational and violent. And I think that's where that kind of comes from. And there's a stigma that's lasted since and beyond, that we look at others that act oddly, atypical, abnormal to themselves or to what our expectation is of the cultural norms. And we kind of shudder away from it. And we make whatever narratives and cultural myths about it. Obviously, now we're pathologizing it, and we're doing, which is still a form of myth making in a way, because we're scared to recognize that is us, that it's just a trauma response in humans, and that needs revealing to the person who is stuck in that trauma as much as to the others. See, if you can create the space where, in my head, it's like a grayish, it's like a monster. It gloops from and it manifests. And so the person can see it, and with empathy and that state of hyper vulnerability, be protected by the space they're in to observe this, not be pathologized in, oh, it's a drug, fuck off. Or here, come talk about it for half an hour a week, and then I'll get out as soon as you make progress. Like, to actually be able to look at that thing, identify it, figure out what the fuck it is, and then to understand the consequential behaviors and maladaptions that have occurred from it. Because that's where most problematic drug use comes from. That's where most dependencies of any which nature come from. It's a maladaptive behavior to deal with something that went fucked up in an experience, in a wiring of an experience.
My understanding of trauma is, and I mean, it has many different complicated meanings for lots of different people. But I mean, essentially, there's stuff that can happen to you or not happen for you, or a combination of both, which disconnects you from yourself in some way. It disconnects you from your authentic feelings, from your gut response, from millions of years of evolution. And we're able to do that because it's essential for us to connect, to attune with whatever comes along. And the environment that we're naturally evolved to come online in is one in which, you know, parents are supported through a whole structural network of wisdom, you know, and eldership and mentorship and ritual and connection with the land, connection with the stars. And that's just not the environment that we're coming online in anymore. So for a lot of us, we're having to disconnect from how we actually feel about that, because we're helpless little babies that need to connect with our overworked, overstressed, isolated mothers. And just about everybody that I work with is dealing with that to a certain degree. Sometimes they're not even aware that the environment that they came online in was not one that supported their brain development. And, you know, I think there's been a lot of change recently about our awareness of that, you know, and awareness was, you know, one of the first steps for me. And so I've got hope that we're engaging in a sort of a process collectively now, you know, and I'm aware of a huge community where it feels like a growing community in Scotland of people that are, you know, trauma-informed medicine workers. You know, it feels really electric to be part of it, and there's some amazing stuff going on here, and we're all learning from each other. You know, it's really magical. But I mean, medicine experiences have the potential to connect us with parts of ourselves that we maybe weren't equipped emotionally or even brain developmentally to deal with when they were happening to us when we were small. We just had to zone right out of them, you know, and we can sometimes get access to those painful memories that we've been pushing down and you know, integrate that in a sort of implicit way, you know, by making something that is subconscious conscious, and that can be really, really powerful. I have personal experience of literally brain developmental systems, so systems that allow you to feel emotions in the body, literally in the body, and then, you know, be able to gravitate towards other people, having this apparatus of how a human being should feel towards things, you know. I've had systems like that come online in my 40s, you know. You know, that is really, really magical stuff, and it's giving your brain a shake, you know, in a controlled, safe environment, and having a having an environment to allow those ripples of trauma and those memories, those implicit things you've carried around, just unravel in a place without judgment. Because often what happened to us has then been indoctrinated into that default mode network, that sense of self, that ego, that of all the shit stuff that we've done as a result of that. And that keeps us locked into that person, that shadow, that thing that needs fucking, working in, and I just feel that, and it's more of a sort of, this is new, I'm not somebody that I don't have the answers, you know what I mean? I'm saying this as somebody that's felt in my gut that I've got things wrong on occasions, and there's been times where I've got things really wrong in medicine work and I've not known how to, and I just, and it's because like, most people, my idea of what integration looks like is something, and it's like we've built these retreats on the sort of framework that we've built all sort of retreats that have come before that, and this is something completely different.
It's not a holiday.
This is not 10 days. And then, some Telegram groups or WhatsApp groups or Signal group, we're missing something there, we're missing something there. And maybe just all the places that I've been to have been missing. And there's places that are doing the long dark with people, maybe there is, and I've just not come across them. But I just think what a gift to be able to give someone to have an environment that just on so many levels is helping and allowing people to reconnect back to themselves.
Yeah.
And the microbiome, the macrobiome, a macrobiome academy. Just a place that, right, this is not something that you're going to have to spend £1,000 every it's like you're here and you're a member, and we need more environments like that. That's the type of environment. I just feel that, and it's not rushing it either. I just feel that we can do so much working with someone for 3 to 6 months, in that type of environment, a sort of closed environment, you would say.
It's the same thing that the military does, various countries in terms of boot camp, whatever. You take them, you change their clothes, you change their appearance, you force them into new routines, you get them to do various sort of training, etc. It's a similar sort of thing, except obviously not as brutalistic. But I think it's the idea of, say, I know this as a cannabis grower. The weed I grow will always taste better than the weed I buy. You talk to any grower, you can't help it. There's something in it. Same with like food. If you grow your own food, like I remember eating potatoes that came out of a garden done with somebody a few years ago, and they were just better. Do you know what I mean? Even if there wasn't the taste that was better, it wasn't a quantifiable, definable characteristic or principle. It just felt right, correct. It felt like I was going with the flow of life for once, at least in that direction. Do you know what I mean? And I think it's part of that, like, sovereignty, autonomy. And I think people that can then buy into that experience, something in them beyond their conscious pilot that's driving them around, that little kid I spoke of before that's trapped in all of us, that is perpetually immature because of the nature of life. We can't know anything. You can't come to maturity you can only come to it through knowledge, and the true humans in all of us know we can't know fuck all, therefore we know the world when you truly can accept that. But because we're locked into those modes, those people run us. They go, oh, here's some money, I'm going to turn up and make me healthy now. That egocentric part of them is never dissolved. They're never stepping out of that default mode network. I think this is something Freud kind of got close. He spoke of obviously the id, the ego, the superego. I call it the head, the heart, the hara. The hara being your old word for instinct, the heart being the emotional center, your neurocortex being like your linguistics, processing, problem solving, forward mapping thinking, etc. And so your higher intelligence is like your spidey sense. Like you got to step in the road and all of a sudden you step back and a fucking car flies past. You're acting ahead of yourself. Do you know what I mean? It's true instinct, or when you're guided by someone going, I want to go this, I want to this. Whereas then feeling is like emotional processing, like the vagus nerve center and all of that. So it's processing all of that. And then your brain is kind of like your cognitive intelligence. It remembers all the shit and goes, no, we did this year ago. But the alignment of these intelligences, I think that's where flow state comes from. That's where you're truly who you are, when all of these intelligences, these intrinsic thought centers. I mean, we look now, you talk about like microbiome, we're getting far more neurochemicals from your gut going to your brain the other way around. So the brain is powered by the chemicals and the processes going on within the body. And you understand, and obviously the humans' relationship to food, as you were saying, by addressing that, it's changing the makeup of those chemicals, and therefore that as that runs through the brain's filter, that changes the way the brain processes. Then when you start to add, as you say, these compounds, it's interrupting those systems, but you're there. The kid gets to sit in the pilot seat and go, oh, I'm in charge. And that's why things can end up quite erratic, quite, as I say, sometimes dangerous, sometimes, really irrational, sometimes just hilarious and whatever. And the unpredictability is because that thing it's never had control. It's never had to be in charge. And the more trauma, or I think it's a wonderful thing you brought up there is correct. It's like Gabor Mate is one of the people who speaks eloquently of this, of the markers, that if you miss these markers of development, you're basically going to be as traumatized as if you were brought up in a sexually abusive, violent household, because you're missing these flourishings, these bloomings of these areas, in the same way that you keep a child in darkness for a period of time when it's born. Its corneas won't develop. It won't develop the ability to see. It's the same sort of thing. Something is not going, whereas what people like yourself do in creating these spaces, I suppose is what I emulate when I go to the woods and do my own sort of individual retreats, is deliberately choosing to get outside of that, look at it, go around it with a hammer, give it a bit of a kick, figure out the bits and put it back together and sort of get back in. And as you say, hope to integrate, hope to remember and be able to facilitate the changes that you wanted to in that state. And I think, there's always going to be work, isn't there, to be done. It's not you can't expect. I did the best one. I went to Peru for 4 weeks and paid this. I went to Jamaica and did this. It's not determinable on that scale,
I mean, I'm not dissing that. There's people that have wonderful experiences, and there's going to be a full spectrum of people that are needing and wanting help, and that's going to cater for some people. Sure. I personally I'm looking forward to this approach. I'm really looking forward to the possibilities of this approach. It feels right for me. That stuff with that you were talking about, that your weed is better than that you can buy, so
I don't know if it is quantifiably, but to me it is. Do you know what I mean? Like psychologically,
absolutely is on a. So if you've got someone and obviously they're staying there and they're staying on a working farm that produces its own food, right? And so they're taking part in that, and so they're eating food. You're connecting people with. That was one of the things that was taken from me, was how much gardening triggers the creativity and that child and that wonder in me as a human being. That was taken from me as well. Another thing that the fireplace that I have on an evening, and I know we can't have 9 billion fires, but I mean, I know from the comfort that I get from a log fire that is, I think connection with fire is something like our connection with waste, you know, like our connection with food. I think the connection that I now have, or I'm trying to have with waste and composting and things, feels really good in my soul somehow, you know, and I wonder why that is, you know, I wonder why that is. When we start taking control of our resources back, why does that feel good in my soul? And it's because for me, I'm like, you know, it would have been an evolutionary advantage for a human being to take care of their waste, their toilets and stuff, because, you know, it would have meant less infections. It would have meant elders grew to older ages, and therefore were able to have experienced more things, and therefore have the wisdom and the collective holding pen for the young parents that might be going through all sorts of shit because they're young humans, they're fucking mad primates, you know. You know, we're complicated emotional beings. We've got, you know, we need a hierarchy of wisdom, human beings, you know. And that's just not the case. We've got a planet full of really sick old people dictating everything. You know, they're not well. There's no wisdom.
Yeah.
You know?
It's the disconnection from the human experience, isn't it? Most people, they go out, I'll make the money. I've made the money. Therefore, I shit in my toilet at home. It's dealt with. There's pipes and there's plumbing, and I pay a bill and it happens. It's done. Oh, I need to get warm. Oh, click a button. Oh, I've got money for it. It's the experience of earning money to then it's become this middleman of the human experience of this. Again, why I love camping. I'm planning to go away week after next, I think is what I'm looking at. Fingers crossed, Durham weather. We'll see. Is you go away and you camp for a week, and you build a shelter. You have to sustain yourself with food, with exactly that. You deal with toilet situations. You have to. Everything you need and you then want becomes more difficult. And the fact that you make it more difficult means it becomes more meaningful. You can then strip away the things that are just superfluous, that are just dopamine boosting for the sake of it. You know what I mean? You've got one bag you're carrying into the woods, maybe a bag of like with water or whatever you're sort of taking in. You've got very specific things. So in that time, you force yourself to be uncomfortable. As you say, you've got nowhere to hit the fucking button. You can't just retreat from that experience. Whereas I think the modern experience is we've got so comfortable, and I don't blame us as a species for it. I enjoy a lot of these home comforts, you know what I mean? But at the same time, we're not living, we're pacifying the pleasure centers of our brain. We're just not allowing ourselves to dip below happy. Anything below happy is bad, negative, can't have it. I'm going to drug myself, whether it's SSRIs or whatever. I'm never allowed to be sad. When these negative emotions are not only the yang of the yin of our experience of the human experience, but I think they're also vital warnings. You know what I mean? If you feel depressed, you feel anxious, you know, you feel fearful, I think the symptomatic of the body kind of rejecting the space that we're living in, but we're not trained cognitively to recognize this, because that's going to affect your ability to make the money. Whereas if you were feeling those things and you suddenly couldn't take care of your waste and you weren't doing the other things, much more viscerally, that negative experience becomes I'm feeling crap, so I need to eat, I should bathe, I should go do do you know what I mean? You're connected to it. There's not this thing in the middle that goes, well, I'll just make more money, I'll get more money, which means there'll be less of a problem, I can pay more money. And you work your way away from the problem. You work your way out of awareness. Whereas living directly, especially if you're like in that collective experience, as you're saying, that it's the efforts of all that will feed all. It's the efforts of all that will clothe all. It's the efforts of all that will protect all. That is, as you say, the quintessential reality of the tribe back in the day, of the hunter-gatherer mentality that, frankly, we have not evolved long enough out of for us to be living this way, in my personal opinion.
Well, I mean, so the one thing that connects all of these tribes all over the world, and it's the thing that distinguishes our tribe from them, is that, and it was put really beautifully in this Netflix series that I watched called Messiah, and it says something about, and it's about worship. You know, We used to worship as a species. We used to worship the nature that we are part of. We held rituals that connected us with the nature, so that if anything came along to hurt that nature, it was hurting us.
Mm-hmm.
It was crossing our boundaries. We were connected with that, and somewhere along the line, I mean, we're so far from the epicenter of what the fuck happened that and it's likely a natural a natural cause that
Mm-hmm.
and so now we're in a place where we worship money. That's what our cult, that's what everything worship. The whole society is built around something that disconnects us from what we are, that feeds into every single trauma that one might have. And what I mean by that, the disconnection, any disconnection that one might have from their self, that void is just filled with anesthetization of some kind. Like you were saying, it's like as a when you look at the collective consciousness of our tribe, when you look at it as one system, I mean, how could you not be experiencing an addict there, or something that's numbing pain? Everybody's, to an extent, Bruce K. Alexander, in his book, as you mentioned him, the globalization of addiction, he categorized all of the different addicts. He separated them into 4 different categories, and this book was actually about what he categorized. It was addiction 3, which was not me. I was the fucking rock and roller addict. You know what I mean? I was the full on, that's an addict. But the book is actually about, the people in my environment that didn't see themselves as part of that problem. That's what he's talking about. It's that, and yeah, that's the hardest bit to change, but it's
it's interesting. I wrote something down there as you were speaking, because I'm really trying to address the I suppose they call it an ADHD trait of interrupting, trying not to kind of go with a thing. But I thought they were trauma economy. So bear with me a second here, right? So again, if the tribe its work was physically for the betterment of the tribe, everybody got up, they did the work, they got the fresh water, they went, they hunted, they gathered the stuff, everybody cooked, everybody ate. They went, oh, we've got Gindy's moving out, he needs a hut. All right, we're going to go build him a hut. Gindy's a northernism, by the way, for anybody, meaning an insert name. So yeah, XYZ needs a hut. The guys go, all right, we'll go tomorrow, we'll cut down the trees, we'll get this stuff, we'll build them a fucking hut collectively. Done. Everybody benefits from everybody's work. At some point, we inserted this totem, this fucking fiat fake bullshit thing of currency, which makes it, I suppose it comes with excess. Once you have enough of loads of stuff, people then wanted to go, well, I need a goat for a chicken. Well, I think 2 chickens is probably worth a goat. And they've got, well, actually, there's going to be sort of change and whatever else. So there's a certain need for it arises under certain systems. And we lost the idea of cash being the extra thing till it became the only thing. And then, as you say, we lost sort of worship to anything that was intangible. Cash is the ultimate tangible object. It can be exchanged for anything. It gives you power. It gives you influence. And so the work that you gain is for individual power, individual influence. So it's disconnected behavior from the tribe. So your work of the day doesn't better the tribe. You could go work at Raytheon and make tens of thousands of fucking pound a month, but you're murdering children with the weapons that you're creating. That's not helping the global tribe, but it's helping you get a new Bentley and go do whatever the hell you want with that money, which again, probably most of those behaviors not helping the collective tribe. And so I think it's this trauma is necessary. It's one of the cogs and components, and it's an economy. Look at SSRIs, how much of an industry that is worth. Look at how much the pathologizing of neurological conditions has become worth. The creation of these new drugs, of treatments, of public speakers, and the all of the industries, that the complexes that these create. And again, none of that is addressing the issue that most things that this is why gardening is so helpful to people. They make prisoners do it and stuff. Like they start to implement meditation and yoga, and look at even Thailand where they get maybe a little bit by the cosh, but they get them dancing and singing, whatever. They're involving in some collective behavior that rewards the collective whole, and they get to participate in that. Most of us, as you were saying, never get to experience it. We get a simulation, a simulacra of these kind of experiences and these kind of life markers with like sports day or shit at school, or they create these artificial competitions that in actual beyond this trap of education would have been for ways to train the tribe to better us. You'd have friendly competitions who can get the bow the furthest, because then you're all getting stronger to be able to hunt. You'd have a competition of who's fastest at catching the ball when we throw it down the hill or whatever, because again you're learning to catch the ball or whatever it is. That similar football, these other things, to become simulations of like acting out of war, of certain intrinsic behaviors that are still so close to the surface of us. And this is what I say about us not being adjusted enough to be in these concrete cages, to have the power of this technology. For all I revel in it, I can't handle it. It's too much. I'm overstimulated all the time. I've spent the past few weeks off because I can't deal with the world that I'm dealing with. I'm still doing a couple of projects here and there, but I'm taking whole days of just literally like, I'm trying to let it pass through me, but I'm still in this overstimulating environment. And I think we're recognizing now, as you say, this trauma awareness, but capitalism, they're sneaking in. It's like the guys in the Bill Hicks audience, when he's doing that, the fictitious guys in the audience, when he's talking about the ad agents and how they should kill themselves. And he's just being, he's getting that aggressive middle America dollar. That's a really good market. You should keep doing that, Bill. And he does this bit about how they're always capitalizing on his rage against them. And that's what I feel is happening here, is the system is going, you're all traumatized, mushrooms helps, do that? Okay, right. If you give us this amount of thousands and you come to our specific centers and do it our way, it'll reduce your depression for 6 months. Then go back out, get depressed again. You need to go make your money. You made your money, give us your money. We'll give you the experience again. You can go back out, go again. And so the system's found a way to profit from our misery and the reoccurrence of our trauma. And that trauma is caused by that capitalist system. The reason the mother and the father are not at home dealing with the fucking child, like they are in a lot of other European countries when they're first born, is our system in this country. The British are backward. We're one of the main societies that kick children out of the bedroom early. They have their own bedrooms, they're isolated, they have this over sense of independence too early. They don't have that collective welcoming to the tribe, because look, only 100 fucking years ago, we were having, most of people having kids in this country, to have an extra laborer, to have another chimney sweep, another guy, the child to work in a different thing, to bring in extra income and just to survive. Again, we're not that far removed from that sort of experience. And yet in the past 20, 30 years, our technology has taken us 200 years beyond where we are, morally, ethically, technologically, traditionally. Like we don't have, apart from the technology, like we don't have anything else is caught up like that. We're closer to living in the huts than we are what we have now, as far as I can see. It's something is outgeared some way. And I think these plant medicines are so viscerally connecting us back to nature. They're so triggering in people. I can't remember what the statistic was, but it was something like 80% of people that had one single dose of psilocybin mushrooms had basically a craving or a drive to be in nature after the fact. They found comfort in nature. They'd go walks in the park, they'd go walk in the woods, they'd go down a river. Anything they did where they got closer to nature, something in them resonated. They reconnecting to it. And so I think this is what it's trying to do, is remind us. I mean, look at this country. We talk about the city noise and everything. Only 1% of our land is built on. 99% of the stuff around us on this little island, just fields and shit. It's trees and grass and spaces to ground, and where there's not trains and all the rest of it. We can reconnect to these things. And like I said, as you said, just doing it over a longer period of time, where people go, I can't just cheat this by going and getting the mushrooms and doing the quick experience overnight. I have to be conscious constantly of my diet, of my sleep pattern, of my media
having
diet.
the discipline, learning the discipline and being supported to have the discipline to do these things, like hell of a lot. I mean, it's a ridiculously high percentage of integration can be done in the first 15 minutes in the morning, you know. I don't know about you, but you know, it was the narrative of what I felt about myself that kept me in my prison. You know, it was that I somehow, whatever happened to me or no happened to me, and all of these things, you know, they'd somehow installed a message in me that it somehow was my fault, that I wasn't good enough, and that it was going to be like this, and this is how it was meant to be, and so therefore, when I found little pockets of recovery here and there, and was holding it together for a while, I couldn't sit in that vibration, and so I'd have to hit the fuck it button to be back in my comfort. Do you know what I mean? Yeah.
I suppose that's quite like, as we say, with the sand and the grooves of these ingrained behaviors of it's easier to do, you know, what I say, the better the devil you know. And I think that's something that needs sort of reminding to people that, you know, recovery looks different to everybody, and recovery from anything to anything from anything, as long as there's conscious movement or change and improvement to that individual's measure, then it should be reveled in, you know, even the conscious effort of wanting to change and adapt. And I think there's too much pressure on, I don't know, kind of this I feel like Russell Brand's an interesting character with his sobriety seems to have become a religion. You know, his refusal of looking at plant medicine, saying that he'll get addicted, that it'll launch him back into this sort of this place, I feel it's an interesting kind of counter narrative to this, that there obviously are a lot of the sober living people that look at plant medicines and go, a drug is a drug is a drug.
I think there is a huge aspect of that in 12-step, the 12-step community, and Russell's part of that. But then Russell's also someone who a lot of people within that community look up to. And he starts, after doing however many years it is that he's been in recovery, if he then starts working with plant medicine, then somebody who's not done all that foundational work, you know, potentially is going to be like, right, cool. And I don't think psychedelics are for people who don't have some sort of foundational work. You know, I mean, you know, I think unless you're putting them into an environment where you're going to put that foundation in, and that's the kind of environment we're talking about, you know, because otherwise it's really dangerous. This is not yoga. This is not like, you know, it's something else. And
I want that on a t-shirt, a mushroom that says "This is not yoga." That would be awesome.
And I'm not saying that yoga is not really powerful. I'm just saying yoga isn't as dangerous, you know, for some people that really need that extra care. And you know, when you can hold somebody that requires that extra care, that really heals the other witnesses in the room to that type of stuff, you know, because that's what's required. Yeah. Have you ever had any difficult experiences yourself?
Oh, I've had some
like you know, when you've done something stupid, perhaps, like, you know, when you're like, you've left the safety of, you know, your set, or you're setting, you know.
Yeah, I've done quite a few. I suppose the main one is weirdly, consequently, I came around from the experience and have been vegan since. I used to produce a lot of caps back in the day, and so I was making some caps one night, and was playing around with, you know, a bottle of acid that somebody had kindly gifted me, and I'd been sort of building up over each weekend, and so I had 2 drops previous weekend, and so the next weekend, we'll go. And I was capping up these caps, and every time I broke a cap, I would eat a cap. And part of me knew this, and part of me obviously was ignoring it, about sort of compound increasing effects of sort of taking, a full spectrum cannabis oil. It's going to have especially something like CBD in it, which affects sort of cytochrome, like different enzymes in the liver, which is going to affect sort of the way the acid metabolizes. So I put 4 drops in a cup of tea, drank my cup of tea. I was watching like Austin Powers on DVD. I think my internet had gone out, and I was just working through a few DVDs while I was doing a few different things. And about half an hour in, like a mandala appeared sort of in the middle of the room, but it wasn't obviously in the middle of the room. And it didn't matter if I shut my eyes or I looked in any direction. That was it. And then everything kind of broke around it. And I kind of panicked. I'd recognized immediately, even with my experience, I was like, if this has come on this fast, that strong, this is going to fuck me up. So usual kind of protocol. I'd already turned my phone off. So, you ride it out. Phone goes away. I know I'm safe. I know I physically cannot die from the experience. Anything that could harm me is me. So I went for darkness. I went into my bathroom. There's no natural light in there. So it is pitch black. And it was too bright. I could still see the mandala. And again, so a little bit of panic. And so I go, right, I either have to try and really ride this fucking thing out, or I have to try and work my way down from this. So I think luckily I had some Valium. And I went and I got some Valium. I was right, if I can engage other neurological pathways, if I can engage something that's going to slow me down, I don't have to ride it out. I've slept on acid before. I can do it again. And so I kind of crawled out of the bathroom, and the light of no light, but just little pockets of it was blinding, almost like physical pushing me back. And it was the DVD had gone on at the menu. And so the whole time, the soundtrack of my evening for hours was just the of what the Austin Powers tune on the DVD menu. And it was starting to hurt me. Like, it felt sharp. I was experiencing such synesthesia of commingling of senses that everything was just like, I couldn't find the ground, if you know what I mean. So I was like sat on this bath mat in the darkness, basically kind of as you are now, almost in a sitting fetal position, and was like, all right, I've managed to take the thing. That's going to help. I'm like, all right, I need to stay hydrated. And so I was starting to like think of all these academic papers I was reading about, like hypothalamic dysregulation. And at that point, I knew too much about acid. You know what I mean? So my brain was then going, well, what about? And I'm like, but it's not. You know the source, you know the product, you know the thing. So just coaching myself, just calmly trying to coach myself. And then after, God, what felt like hours, probably wasn't at all, I managed to crawl in the lounge after a few attempts. And I had to like crawl out my bathroom, round through another door, and the TV was on the back wall, and trying to get through that room, the brightness pushing me back. Eventually, I crawled enough to, I think I grabbed it was like playing through the Xbox or something. I managed to get the control, and I slap around the control and trigger it turned off. And I cooled down instantly. I got cooler. The room, like, I felt the weight had lifted. It was like gravity had shifted, and I was all right. Crawled back into the darkness, and then I had this I lost me completely. And so I'm cuddling in this bath mat, and I laying on my side. I had like between my knees and that, because anytime I was like touching my own body, felt like I was falling through myself, and I had no external. It was a horrible but insanely wow experience at the same time. And so I had this bath mat like between my legs and between my things, and my body wasn't touching itself, and kind of on the floor. And I started having these visceral, the world just expanded because of the darkness. I lost everything. And I went through these experiences of reliving and dying countless things. I was worms, I was birds, I was whales, I was whatever, and everything kept killing something. And it was killed and dying, and it was just the thing that killed felt good, but every time I was the victim of this death was just I was crying. It was like literally snorting out. I was just going through these constant cycles of just fucking death, and it was just so fucking traumatizing. I don't know how many hours passed. I mean, I must have come up at about, I think, 7, 8 o'clock in the evening, and it's like 2, 3 sort of in the morning when I start to come out of this sort of experience a bit, to recognize that I actually live. That I'm breathing, that I can feel like I was not me. I was watching, I was in that thing gone. And then as I started to come back, I was traumatized, held by all of this fear of somebody's going to come and kill me and hunt me and eat me. And then I started to recognize like I'm human. And I remember this, I can't remember which fucking book it is. It's about Taoism. It's on the Tao of something. And it's one of the guys is describing, he has a dream where he dreams he's a butterfly, and then he wakes up and he can't tell if he's a man who dreamt he was a butterfly, or he's a butterfly that is now dreaming he's a man. And it was that same sort of abstract experience. And then I started to look around sort of my house, and the default starts to kick in enough. I mean, everything's still fucked, but I'm sort of like, okay, I'm a me, I'm a thing. And it's bed, crawl into bed, and again, just cover everything over me, and just lost in these experiences of like the most visceral lived dreams, but there was no control, there was no destination, there was no discerned meaning that I could find. It was just these hellish landscapes of just terrible experiences. And when I woke up the next morning, this all-encompassing sense of gratitude, like literally washed over me. It was like, I survived, and it was like a near-death experience. And there was this just resonance from me the rest of those days of like, I need to do everything right now. And I walked in my kitchen and I couldn't do anything. I'd already been on, like, I was vegetarian for a while anyway. And like the smell of milk made me want to vomit. And like anything I looked at, the smell, the textures, the taste, the colors. Like, why is that red? Why is that this? And I was like, well, and it was water. I was drinking water, and then it started to hurt. So I was like, bread's got no flavor. I was eating sort of bread. And I was just trying to, like, taste was gone. Like, it was the hardest reset I've ever had in my life on one of these experiences. It was like I jumped into another reality of me, and I'd been given the memories of me of previous experiences, but everything about me died, and everything that was to become me, that is me, was born from that experience. It was so, I said traumatizing is the best way to describe it, but the long-term trauma of it has been positive. Do you know what I mean? Like, it was such a negative, difficult, visceral experience. Like I said, that's what I mean about like manifesting and facing something. And it was, I don't know, something in me was driven to survive in every instance. I wanted to survive. And it's bear in mind, I've been, obviously, my mental health's been terrible over my life. I've been in and out of fucking sort of psychiatric care, you know, self-harm, taking all the fucking, had all the pathologies, had all the fucking drugs. And I feel like that experience was me facing that, that was my trauma, was manifest in a way that I could understand. It gave me a narrative. It gave me a journey, the hero's journey in the fucking Campbell, I can't remember, Joseph Campbell kind of way of looking at it. And I survived that experience, and I was born again out of it. I guess the man I am today, like, I lost so much of what I used to carry because I faced it in those moments. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense to anything outside of like to anybody or anything else. But to me, that, even thinking of it now, like it's like I'm recounting what it was one of the most important sort of things in my life, but it was also at that moment one of the most difficult decisions to understand what I could and should fucking do to deal with that. Because I could have panicked. I immediately, like, I didn't prep myself well enough. That was when I was on my cocky rise of like, I could do all kinds of this shit. And I was doing ridiculous doses of various things. But there's something about the way that hit, and with the whole experience, that just grounded me into this. I am this. This is me. My cage is not, sorry, my body is not a cage. It is me. Do you know what I mean? And it kind of reconnected me with sensation of, like, for years I didn't have nerve feelings in my forearms because of the damage that I'd done from such deep cutting and wounding of like arteries and nerves. And literally feeling like sensatorily nerve endings, and like I have full feelings back in my arms now after over 10 years from not self-harming. And it's looking into the science of it. It helps produce neurological pathways, so it can help therefore produce nerve ending pathways, as far as my understanding of the science can go. But it was literally, it put me back in me, instead of being, as you were saying, that default, that operating from autopilot. I had to rebuild my life. I had to rebuild my diet. I had to rebuild my routine. I had to, I was crying at adverts and shit. I was so emotional all the time. I had no skin. I had no coverage. I tore apart the armor that I guess I built from that trauma. And in that experience, I was, like I said, reborn and had to reconstitute. And that's what led me to read all the other books and everything. From that came this rebirth of a desire for knowledge, a curiosity, a need to understand, because I still can't quantify that experience. I can recount it. Do you know what I mean? But I can't truly understand it. I can try and, like I said, say that I think this is a metaphor for this, or this means this, or whatever. but I'm never going to truly understand it. All I can ever do is really appreciate it. And that was still, like I said, one of the stupidest experiences. But I'm not then saying people should be reckless with these things at all. I'm saying I was lucky in that instance. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. You're really lucky, man, by the sounds of it. Like, really lucky. That sounds quite terrifying.
Yeah, it was not a ride in the park.
And from, conversations we've had, and I know that you've done a lot, or you choose now, or certainly it's been that way recently, is that when you do some psychedelic work that you're doing it primarily alone, right?
I've had some pretty tough experiences with other people where they've either had sort of some form of temporary psychosis, if you want to call it such a thing, or they've had such a break from themselves. I mean, I think one of the worst ones was the classic acid reset. And so the person that I was tripping with had got themselves stuck in like a 30-second loop, and the brain was just repeating the same thing. And they would get confused, but say like, everything's fine, la la la, and repeat and go back, and no, it's fine. And it got to hours, and it got quite scary, and it got difficult. They then thought that they'd, soiled themselves, sort of thing. It was a very difficult experience. We were not set up to have a shamanic type experience. Do you know what I mean? But again, it was, my tolerance was at such a point with LSD at that point, and I tried to warn them of because I'd basically taken the bottom of a bottle as well. So you had all the sponge material at the top of your dropper. So it's got all of that plus your extra and I'd just taken that plus the other drops into whatever I sort of mixed it into, and tried to say this is not just a couple of drops. It's got the excess of this. Obviously, there was a slight dilution, so you do end up with more of a concentration of sort of the crystal of it in the absorbent papers. That's what I'm saying about a much higher dose, and I think that it just caught them, and it can catch any of us. I've had moments, like I said, where I've DMT has caught me a couple of times, and I've had psychotic type experiences. I've had a double trip on DMT before, which was an incredibly difficult experience, where I basically the same trip launched like twice, but side by side, and it was like my eyes split, and it was like going down two eyes and like two sounds. But I was then transported back to a DMT trip. I had a product at Spanibus. I'm not going to name which stall it is for their own safety, but it was with this guy called Nicholas, and he's a beekeeper. He's a French guy that had trained his bees to make cannabis honey. And we were basically playing a game of chicken on this fucking DMT vape cart. And it was like, I was there and I could hear the noise of the expo in all directions, all these voices. But it's like I said, they were delayed. Like one was going by a few seconds, one was not. And it was just this so disorientating. And then when I tried to like actually stand and be out of the trip sort of thing, like wild tripping, normally on DMT, depending how far I've gone sort of through, I'm still in the real world. It's an augmented world, but it's still the real world. Whereas this, I was like, I was touching objects in my house that I couldn't see. That was not there. It was a complete fracturing. And again, luckily it was only a 15-20 minute experience. I was grounded again, and I just spent the next 2 days basically sort of like meditating, doing yoga, not taking any stimuli from anything, just sitting with myself until it died down, like the background noise, like the echo, the reverberation of it, you know what I mean? But it was, again, just such a terrifying experience. But the thing that grounded me was me, that little child in me, sort of going, it's just drugs, mate. That little voice, the same they did with the acid that night in the bathroom. It's something in me was good. You'll get through this. Trust it. Trust you. I trust you. Don't panic. Obviously, yeah, feel the things and be fucking worried, but don't fear it. Whereas, like I said, when I've tripped with others, I am worried to be that vulnerable in a space that of people that I don't trust. Do you know what I mean? It's not to say I don't trust some people, but it would take a lot for me to feel safe in those environments because of my childhood trauma. Do you know what I mean? So whereas if I'm choosing to make myself as vulnerable as I do, the reason I kind of pick like the wooded areas that I do so far away from people is to ensure that I can just melt. I can have the worst experience and have the time to rebuild myself and kind of deal with it, and know that I've taken the resources of everything that I'd need, and I have touch wood, the skill set, the ability to deal with myself in those situations. But I would like to do sort of group work because I think it would be beneficial in healing an aspect of me that I can't pay attention to when I'm by myself, and that is integration into community. It's something I struggle with the way my brain works, the way my trauma has sort of led me. I've always felt abstract, alienated in some way, disconnected from the group. No matter how much I want to be a part of it, there's still
in itself, that is not just a response to trauma, but is a trauma in itself.
Yeah.
You know, it is a trauma. You know, like to, you know, we've spoken a little bit about, just because it's just another teacher that I love, you know, Francis Weller's work that he does on grief, you know, where he suggests that for human beings, grief, and he thinks, you know, his language for trauma is grief, unheard grief, unmet grief, and I don't mean relatives dying. I mean the grief for the environment, the grief for the loss of our childhood and environment, the the loss of so many things, our connection to so many things, and he suggests that we're grieving that, and that for the first time in our history, that human beings are grieving in private. You know, they're grieving in silence, and even when they're attempting to recover, it's happening with like one therapist. It's still not happening communally. And for human beings, grief and feelings and trauma and everything was always communal. It was always a communal experience, and we've probably evolved alongside this collective experience into a point where we actually can't metabolize or process some of the wounds that we're feeling unless there's witness to it, unless there's presence with it, and presence from the people that we love and the people that we spend our days with, from our children feeling our pain. You know, that is essential for them to regulate and to learn that it's okay for adults to feel pain. We don't, you know.
I was just thinking that makes so much sense when you think of a funeral, a wake, these traditions that we do with death. It's a public grief, like you said. It's to bear witness, it's powerful. It makes something more meaningful, and this is something that I've kind of had in my own life with. Again, I've traveled a lot. I've been lucky enough to go to some wonderful places, but I found myself at some, like, you know, sunrise halfway up the fucking Rocky Mountains, you know, beautiful landscape in every direction, alone for fucking miles, you know, with fucking my DMT vape cart, and still with a profound sense of disconnect. There's wonder, and I am nature, and I am connected to that, but there's still this sense of that, what am I doing for me? Not me, but me that's you. If that makes any fucking sense. You know, I have this expression of saying, if I was raised you, born as, you know, so I was born you, raised as you, lived as you, I'd be you. I would act as you, say as you, do as you. Therefore, there's only one in consciousness, inhabiting, manifesting, you know, little mushrooms growing from the mycelium of consciousness. And yeah, so I want to feel that I'm more connected to that, to the me and others, that commonality, the thing that I found in the few friends that I actually choose to keep and I've kept all my life, that we get each other without getting each other. The kind of people that you haven't seen for a year, and you start talking again and you're finishing the conversation you were having a year ago. It's just so intrinsically connected with those individuals. And I find that is such a rarity because of the construct of culture, because of the constructs of our society, that everything is privileged by cost. You can be part of a club in a society and whatever, but it's gonna cost you to participate in it. You know, if you want to be in a sport XYZ, you're going to buy the uniform, pay the membership to go to the space. It's going to cost you to get there. You've got to do XYZ. It's not there directly anymore. Whereas in the tribe, like I said, it was, can you do a thing? Yeah, we need you to come do the thing. Come do the thing. It didn't require 4 years of education. It didn't require
I'm not by any means suggesting that we're needing to go back to being hunter gatherers or anything like that.
Something small part of me is, I'll admit that. A small part of me is.
But absolutely, it is a matter of fact that our brain development as children demands that we go back to some sort of thing that resembles the emotional environment that supported parents. And parents were supported by a whole community of other people doing other tasks, and parents did other tasks too. And there was some wisdom at the top, and there was lots of kids at the bottom, and the emotional. I mean, I don't know what my modern society is going to look like. But unless I mean, and I'm evidence of this, and you're evidence of this, and nearly everybody I'm coming into contact with is evidence of this. That if we don't get this right, then we create a lot of unnecessary pain in the individual organisms and the individual humans, because they're disconnected from everything that a human being needs to see to reflect its to see its reflection back, and to see its gifts seen and heard, because we're all individuals, and and our gifts need to be seen and heard, and often they're not when the adult who's seeing them has their collection of gifts and they're not being seen and heard. How are they meant to do the whole tribe's work? I don't know what the emotional environment looks like for children, but I mean, we segregated them by age recently as well. We segregated children by age, and we removed mentorship from the school and environment. Really, we did. I mean, we removed adults from the children's learning environment, and because all the adults had to go and do something else. We built a society and a culture where all the other adults had better stuff to do than look after their kids.
And that's definitely an intrinsic lesson that I feel is learned by a lot of the youth. Yeah,
I feel that, and I come from a family of teachers, and so having any sort of conversation about the complete structure of the education system being wrong is not. If you wanted to talk about certain points within the current system, that's fine, but to say no, we need to break it down is. So it's been that's been a difficult conversation to have throughout my life. But the more and more I learn about what healthy environments, healthy emotional environments look like, just through reading and observing things, and it's a huge interest of me, this work, because I'm trying to create a place in which we can allow people to maybe be born again, and to give their brains that big shake like that you had, but to just have everything in place that we can have for a period of time to maximize the potential of that medicine experience, and to maximize the potential of them then maximizing that experience by having the skills that they need to look after themselves physically, nutritionally. We're looking at potentially teaching people how to hold space themselves, so that it's a gift that they can share with the people in their lives. They can sit them down, and we can start doing this, because I mean, this whole psychedelic movement started when it started, and but it's been bubbling up in people's basements and stuff. It's been people growing mushrooms, it's been people extracting plants, and yeah, we're there. I mean, I think that I'm having a lot of, and maybe it's because of what's going on in my own life at the moment. But I'm actually full of hope today for our tribe. I feel that we're getting there. I feel that the medicine is out. I feel that enough people are getting access, or at least that healing language has been around for a long enough time for some people to be getting it. And
Mm-hmm.
And I just feel that, because, addiction and trauma affects nearly every single family that in the United Kingdom, and now we're in a place where that was just kind of accepted and denied in some sort of way, that we just weren't dealing with it. But slowly, for the last decade, the language has been changing around trauma, and the language has been changing around healing, and there's a million yoga schools everywhere. That's doing a world of good. You know what I mean? There's meditation centers popping up all over the place. Things are looking up. It's looking up. I really feel that.
Yeah, for sure, man. No, I agree that it's something I kind of rebel against in myself. I think we all have this intrinsic thing of like safeguarding the things that we feel are ours or our culture or something that represents us. And obviously the more popular psychedelics and theogenic medicines, etc., become, part of me's going, well, yeah, but we've been telling you this for ages, and like it's ours. But then at the same time, so actually the more popular it is, the more awareness that is raised. Even if these practices are not necessarily done with the best intentions at first, there's companies trying to patent it, do X, Y, Z, make profit from it. It's still getting that awareness out. And I think that there's something in the experience that makes you question the authenticity of, well, I guess of money capitalism in some way. This isn't to say that these drugs make you socialist. Again, that's not necessarily what I'm saying. It just makes you question the political paradigm altogether, the nature of the economy set up under the current capitalist system that it is. And like we were saying sort of before, of them paying for it, I think there's still going to be little sparks, no matter how much they try and build a system where they allow people to have that profound experience, where they'll kind of go, I should be doing this in the woods with fire with like 10 people. Do you know what I mean? They'll almost want to then seek, or at least then be less fearful of that more primal experience. And I think in the long run, the primal experience will win, in the same way that craft cannabis will kick the fuck out of corporate cannabis all day, every day, there's a level playing field, when we move up to that kind of open market. So I'm the same. I'm optimistic that
the cannabis will just be something that people grow for themselves. Do you know what?
Fingers crossed.
Let's hope that that's something that people are allowed to do. You know what I mean? Seems kind of insane, eh?
Well, again, when you think that soon the government are going to be releasing licenses for MDMA, for ketamine, DMT, and yet the people at home can't grow a couple of plants, then you start to really question the motive of these things. If then the government is saying, oh, well, cannabis is medicinal, but only if we sell you it. The same going, oh, there was mushrooms are really good for you as long as we give you it and you come to our environment. But if you pick them in the field, you're going to get in trouble. It's...
Yeah. I don't... Let's face it, the studies, the drugs that they're legalizing, the DMT, they call it the spirit molecule. I don't know who called it that. Was it Strassman?
I think that's Strassman, yeah.
Right. Well, I mean, for me, DMT, as he's talking about it, has had all of the spirit removed from it. It's had all of the plant removed from it, literally. You start off with this plant matter. There's a bunch of them on the planet that have DMT in them, and you just remove all the plant, and then that's what they're taking. Ayahuasca, the ayahuasca brew in the Amazon, which uses a number 2 or 3. Two for me it would be 2, and I hear some people drink some brews with mimosa, but that's a full spectrum medicine, that has a, and I mean it's also a gut brain medicine. When we're talking about reconnecting with the gut, a lot of our trauma is held in the gut. It's been not listening to our gut response. It's all that stuff is stuck in the gut, and that is removed from that way of administering DMT. The the group setting, which is almost essential. You know, I mean, I've sat in ayahuasca ceremonies with families, you know, where no one's really. I mean, the space feels held, the whole family feels held by the father, and there's a little bit of tapping going on, and but you know that the family are just sitting, the entire family in medicine space together, and there's burping and there's throwing up and there's, you know, there's all sorts of bodily functions going on, but there's no language. They don't need to, you know, they're just experiencing this and witnessing each other's purging of getting the stuff that got stuck in the body out, because it's a healthy process for humans to do that. We're not even allowed to burp or fart at the fucking dinner table, man. You know, and these people are throwing up in front of each other every fucking Tuesday, you know, or second week as a family tradition, drinking these wonderful medicines, just processing that stuff that's stuck, you know. And yeah, I'm not convinced DMT like that's the spirit molecule at all, mate. I really am. And the medicine that we work with are full spectrum extractions from a number of DMT plants. It's a completely different thing. There's a vibration, a healing energy, a message, an energy, an entity, if you like, with these individual plants, and they're all different, and they all have different ways of getting in about the subconscious and in about the psyche, and so therefore they're, you know, one can be better for one person's problems than the other, you know, and then there's the whole combination of other plants that you could be mixing them with that have different effects slightly. This whole thing will be lost. This whole group work will be lost. We'll be doing it in centers, you know, where you've got fucking PhDs putting Enya on, do you know what I mean, and just giving you a ridiculous dose of psychedelics, and of course you're going to have an amazing experience when you come back and survive that shit. But you know, psychedelic work has to be really gentle. There's very, very sensitive people out there that need and require a completely different approach, and that means that when we're doing stuff as a group, we approach everybody like that. Because that's how we learn to support the sensitive people in the space. We can teach so many levels of what we're doing in a medicine space, in an interactive medicine space. You know, we're gently taking people to their edge and then letting them come back and come back into their bodies, and then make the choice to go further back into that stuff. You know, we're not just going here, there's a massive dose, boom, on you go, mate. Do you know, I'm going to play my drum now. It's like it's an interactive process of almost consent, you know, with the medicine, and what that gives is just a very trusting, loving, caring experience. It's very different, you know, and you were saying, you know, you'd be scared about what stuff came up in a session. You know, what we're discovering, certainly what I'm discovering is that more and more what our trauma and our stuck energies and our disconnection from self is actually disconnecting us from now isn't the pain that we need to metabolize and process. It's the fucking love that's out there. You know, it allows the love to blast us in, rather than it's not this big difficult thing that we come together and do in session. And somebody's with this medicine, it's not, people aren't throwing up, and you know, it's people are coming together and having quite profound experiences of love, you know, that they're being completely disconnected from because of what happened or shouldn't have, you know, happened or should have happened for them. You know, it's the love, it's the connection to ourselves, it's the connection to everything that we're lacking. Because when you have that apparatus, when you know essentially in your cells that that's what you are, you know, it's almost like being recalibrated in your cells. You know, it's like you're so out of sync that it's in your cell. It's like, and then you can, you know, and that is lasting, man. You need to go back into a really bad integration environment for that to, and that's essentially what a lot of people are doing. You know, and that I'm looking forward to exploring a different framework for how we go about that. And, you know, it's a concept. It's like, I'm not doing this yet. It's very, very difficult to do here. But I mean, that's where we're heading to next year, is to create a place that we can go right into that work with someone, and then just allow them to completely unravel while supporting them nutritionally, emotionally, creatively, and reconnecting them with skills that humans have lost and feelings that humans have lost, like growing food, or disposing of your waste, or being a self-contained system with regards to energy. You know, this is the kind of stuff that's essential for happiness, and it's not even in any framework that anybody's thinking about. You know, that these things, the connection with the fire, communal fire, oh, how good is that? How good a medicine is that? You don't even need to have beers or anything. You know, you could just have a few people around a fire, and it's like boom. You know, you're in that space. It's 500,000 years ago.
Yeah, I think there should almost be a caveat against Maslow's hierarchy of needs for the base that says these things need to be done by you. They cannot be purchased, because the purchasing of the thing to, you know, just solving your problems with money indirectly, you're not connected to those things. As we spoke of before, it's so they may get dealt with, but as soon as your plumbing backs up, you're fucked. What are you going to do? Do you know what I mean? If your kitchen goes out, your cooker's done. Do you know how to cook on fire? Can you? It's not. You know, I'm saying that we all need to prepare for an apocalypse, but I think it's a confidence and competence thing. That if you are capable and you know you are capable, you're more confident in given situations, and therefore you're less likely to, I think, get caught up in the bullshit of ego of yourself. You know what I mean?
And that takes us back to the schooling environment. You know, where you're literally being trained to do one or two things, you know, rather than being a full spectrum human being.
A full spectrum human.
I met this guy in the jungle. He lived next to a camp that I stayed in for a while. His name was Renee, wonderful dude. And I mean, he could climb the tree with a chainsaw on his back and and then he could cut planks with the chainsaw, and then he could build a boat to take the kids to school, and then he could make a fishing rod and go out night fishing, and he had his wee shop, and he kept his own chickens, and just fucking hell, man.
Completely,
you know, human being built like a brick shit house. And I've never seen a man so emotional around his grandchildren and his children. Do you know? What a wonderful teacher. And it's just because he's in his nature. He's no fucking. And you could finish on that. But I could see even in their family the corruption of currency, the corruption of being exposed to the city, which is a few miles away. You know, I could see where they've come from, and I could see where they're going very clearly. And it's going to take a change in the framework. You know, it's going to take a I mean. The market's going to run riot through these countries for another couple of generations, regardless of where we get our shit together in the West. You know, while we're getting our shit together in the West, the market is going to rip through these fucking developing countries. You know, it's just going to like what it's doing. You know, and
it's interesting. It's interesting. That again is a wonderful sort of way of visually representing what is kind of happening here, in that because that guy doesn't have a 9 to 5 in some office where he has the high stress and pressure and he feels 50 different emotions a day, and he's going through all of this grief and all of this energy is going towards just making the fucking money. It's like you've only got, I use the spoons analogy that I think fibromyalgia and a few other people use. You get like so many spoons a day, and it costs you a spoon to do each action, and then you've run out of spoons. And so that guy's using his emotional spoons at work. But that guy would be using all of his emotional spoons at work, and he's coming on, he's got like 2 spoons left, and he needs to, you know, like reconnect with the wife and be like, sorry, I haven't seen you all day. Like, I got to connect with the kids and the grandkids, you know, the grandparents, the wider family. Like, that's then more spoons than he's got in that analogy. Whereas because he's not wasting the spoons caring about a job in a corporation for whatever, which I'm not saying that we need the shit that we need, I guess, to sustain what we have currently until we have a better system. But do you know what I mean? Instead of that being wasted outside of the familial unit, all of that energy and resource is kept within the familial unit, which strengthens them, and they don't need external pressure. But that, I guess, is antithetical to what Western evolved democracy looks like. You know what I mean? This neoliberalist capitalist system looks like. It wants to devour those people. They're the enemy. That's wrong. Why? We want to give you plumbing. Come shit inside. You know, we want to give you fast food. We want to give you this. We want to give you that. Like, come be part of our world and be enslaved by it and be miserable like the rest of us.
I mean, the current economic system deracinates community. I mean, and we just have to understand that. You just have to understand. I can't remember what the statistics or the numbers were, but you know, it was exposed in this guy's book recently. I saw it on a podcast, and they were, you know, it was one of these big pharma companies, and you know, they knew from their trials that they were going to kill X amount of people, but they worked out that paying damages to those families from that X amount of people was going to be less money than what they got from selling the medication. And so they've done it anyway. They continue to do it and just killed people. And that, you know, that is the ultimate disconnection from our. I mean, to rise to the top of this system, to get the jets, to get any of that. I mean, it's a narcissistic system. It requires you being disconnected from yourself to rise to the top. Just look who gets into the power these days. You know, it's a completely narcissistic system. Disconnect, like stuck in adult body with power fucking complexes, you know, just madness.
Yeah, it's mental, because it's, as we were saying, like, so they're the people that are going to Burning Man. They're the guys that are wanting and willing to travel around the world and pay $4,000, $5,000 for a 2-week fucking psychedelic vacation, effectively. They're starting to look for answers, but they're so trying to control the outcome. I think of, again, like what happened at LSD in San Francisco. You know, fucking wonderful city. Had the pleasure of visiting, had the pleasure of tripping in. It was brilliant experience. But they went from being your central point of the hippies to then Silicon Valley and the housing crisis, the economic inflation and everything in that region. And they then became, I guess, like yuppie 2.0s, and LSD is still rampant, but it's now microdosed to improve efficiency. And it's so antithetical to, again, like, it's what, and again, I'm not saying go full Leary, don't tune in, turn on, drop out. That's not what I'm necessarily saying. But there is something in it beyond the message for us, that in the experience you get what you need from it, what it wants to give you. Different medicines help in different ways, provide different access. As you said, they kind of wiggle in different ways. But then I think, especially at the larger dose, there's something you feel, like a grander empathy, as you said, of the collective pain. And that's what I felt those couple of weeks after that extreme LSD experience was, I felt like I could feel people's pain in my presence, and it would feel heavy. It would feel burdensome. I'd suddenly feel like scared. You suddenly feel what they're feeling in them. And it was like a very like, whoa. And I think that's where we're empathetic creatures.
The ego response that disconnects us from others is a protection from feeling those feelings. You know, I mean, how else are we able to walk past people in chaos? You know, how are we able to put up with that shit? You know, powerlessness. We've been made to feel powerless about ourselves. Literally, the tools to heal ourselves have been taken away from us. Because the very system in which we worship disconnects us from each other. It disconnects us from the land. Every space, every place, it just fills it with war or fucking suffering. Because that's brilliant for business, you know? Absolutely.
Yeah. There you go, folks. If you want to set up your own capitalist endeavor, all you need is some suffering and a good bit of war. There's plenty of investors out there.
So many places. There's so many places that they could still go to war with as well, you know?
Oh God, as you said before, it's the machine, the capitalist machine is running so rampant. I mean, you think of what it's done to your traditional mall, you know, your shopping center. has been obliterated. I mean, everything's online now, and I mean, the UK and many others under what could be arguably WEF policies is looking at these 15-minute cities and going, everything you'll need is 15 minutes from your home. And it's like, well, then why have you killed the high street? Why are you building these retail parks half an hour away? Why? None, the policies don't align. The things don't make fucking sense. And I think, again, more than ever, this is why people are turning to things like cannabis, whether they realize it or not. Like, cannabis is a metacognitive inducing agent. You smoke it, you start to think about how you're thinking. You get in yourself. You get critical of yourself. You get to, as I like to sit to the line, I get to talk between all three effectively. I can start to then go, oh, what am I feeling? What am I thinking? I pause, create a space for myself to emotionally unpack. Do you know what I mean? And allow yourself that pause to kind of just experience what you're experiencing. And then same with sort of your instinct of trying to train that in a way that you're listening to it in any given situation. You're in a conversation with somebody and you're going to agree to something or disagree. Listen to that thing inside of you, man. It's fucking powerful and it rarely leads you wrong. But these things need training. As you say, we've been indoctrinated into believing that it's kind of pseudoscience. It's hippy dippy. It's, you know what I mean? It's new age. It's all bollock. Do you know what I mean? We're in this single symptom pharmacological paradigm. They identify an illness, identify a symptom, run a fuck ton of trials, find a drug that suppresses one symptom, sell it as the fucking cure. And that's what they've been doing for a century plus. Whereas these are not maintenance medications. It's not, oh, here, we've made a psilocybin or psilocin antidepressant, take this one a day for the rest of your life. They're not going to fit into those models. These need to be these profound experiences, you said, that and controlled in a way for safety, but not controlled in a way for indoctrination. And this is my fear of going into a hospital and you go up to the third floor and you go in this room and there's curtains on the wall and they've got little lava lamps and some religious iconography, and you take this thing and they play some music, you put on the blinders and whatever else. That to me feels too controlled. It's not, like I said, my most profound experiences and my best experiences have also, like I said, paradoxically probably been some of my most dangerous in terms of how difficult they were, but they were beneficial because they were difficult. Do you know what I mean? Whereas I think that in that clinical setting, that, what do you call it, over hygienic and just like hospitals with that certain smell and the vibe of a hospital, just
it's not a good environment to come back online
and I don't yeah
you know, it's not it's they're using plant medicines that are devoid of plants. You know, they're not using a group setting, which is the natural environment for human beings to do this stuff. They're not using a framework of talking in which they're allowed to share their personal experience and give identification to potentially and you know, I don't know if you've ever sat in a group meeting, you know, when you're trying to work out what's wrong with you and you hear someone talking about something and it makes you, and then just to be able to identify with that, you know, and that's what brings people close together, you know, and they remove that from the relationship between participant and practitioner as well. I mean, it's just that's three things, the three essential things, and they remove it.
It's all
they put on mechanical music, electronic music, or through a speaker, and they go, there you go, pal, you know. It's going to have value for some people, man.
Oh, of course.
If it's going to get the laws changed, then great. But these people should not be allowed anywhere near writing the framework of what this should look like, because they have no experience of what it would look like or what it should look like.
I think the rule
they're going to create a yoga retreat in which people are doing psychedelics at, you know, and that sort of and that's we've got loads of them, man.
The thing is, if you run a yoga center, you're usually a yogi, which means you've had to dedicate a good year or two, at least a good couple of years, to get your sort of accreditation and get up to that kind of level and to get yourself in that kind of physical shape. So in that, you understand the practice because you've done the practice. Whereas these practitioners, some of them have experienced it, but they're experiencing synthetic compounds. As you said, they're dosing people with psilocin. So we get psilocybin from mushrooms, the indigenous psychoactive mushrooms around the UK and around the world, and our gut transforms the psilocybin into psilocin. But what they've done is they've gone to that and gone, all right, we can artificially construct that. In the same way, obviously, they use ketamine, they're using MDMA, they're using chemically formulated substances. I will obviously advocate all day long for MDMA, even ketamine to certain and lesser degrees. But these artificial compounds in an artificial environment are going to produce artificial outcomes. It's not authentic. I mean, LSD is, I think, quite a unique one in that there were slightly different formulations, different chemists, obviously, different batches have different, I'm going to say natures, because that's the best way I can fucking describe it scientifically. There's something present beyond the process to produce what is lysergic acid dimethylamine. No, can't read it in my brain. I know what I mean, though. LSD. But there's something slightly different there. But even that, it's compared to a high dose psilocybin experience, or even whether try like mescaline or something like that. It's less pointy. This language is terrible, but I mean, it's more curvy, it's more colorful, it's more natural, it's more bountiful. It's more flow state. Yeah, there are moments of juxtaposition and stepping away from it, but the whole experience flows. Things like, especially an LSD experience, you get your peaks, your troughs, you get trigger points where certain stimuli will take you into different things. Obviously, adding in different things will add different results. But then the plant medications, like you say, I think that it's in the same way that people know, smoking a blunt versus vaping a THC distillate cart. Yeah, they're both going to get you high technically in one sense, but one's going to have a full-bodied effect because of the terpenes, the flavonoids, the cannabinoids, even I suppose to a certain lesser degree, like the lipids, the fats, the other components that are then combusted and consumed by the body that are then worked through in some which way. And I think that's you're saying is the same thing. So I think it should be a requisite that you can go get your degree and go to university. I'm not going to shit on higher education because we do need standardized information for qualified individuals in certain fields. But they also need real world experience. Do you know what I mean? I use the analogy, and actually somebody told me off recently.
Particularly when you're talking about really complex, I feel trauma is very subjective. How the world affects us is very subjective to the individual, right? How the disconnection happens, when it happens, how it affects us, right? And I've learned this through all sort of community recovery parts that I've been in and throughout my journey, often the people that know the way out of hell are people who've climbed out of there with help from others, and I want to see that qualification somewhere if we're going to be doing qualifications. In fact, that's the first and foremost, that's the qualification. But I didn't want people being attracted to this work with some avoidant pattern of finding out or trying to find out in some subconscious crazy way what's actually wrong with them, because the psychologist world's just full of those clowns.
It's the majority by far. I'd say comedians as well.
Maybe it's the same job.
But yeah, and again, we both of them speak to just this whole thing of we need each other to understand ourselves. I cannot know how much I read until I find out how much others read. I cannot know how well I can shoot a basketball until I play with others. I cannot, do you know what I mean? I can practice and do the thing, but it's not real. It's not real until it's involving the community, or that community can be a familial unit, a relationship, the wider society. But it's everything is more meaningful, more powerful, and I think it is because of the connection. It is that.
So
I
see
don't
that
know.
word connection's one of those words that could mean a bunch of things. What really changes my life in recovery is accountability. And I don't mean accountability to myself, because I've been hiding from myself my whole fucking life. I'm really good at it, right? And so I can get lost in that. I'm talking about accountability to others. Because that's that communal grief being manifest in my present. That's me going, this is going on for me now. I'm needing support with this. And I need to be able to talk about it when I'm going to fuck up, because I'm going to fuck up because I've not done it yet. You know, I need to be able to talk about it without judgment. That's the environment. That's the integration coaching environment that I'm fortunate enough to be a member of, a participant in, an observer of. You know, it's just I have a few relationships in my life like this now, and it's making a fucking huge difference. And you know, that Francis Weller work is kind of at the core of that. You know, it's about how do I express, you know, what's really going on for me in a way that doesn't hurt others, but and I think for you to optimize finding that space with someone, you know, you need to be able to observe them for a while as well. Sorry, I keep going back to this, but it's like I'm talking about what we're doing out loud for the first time, like, you know. Yeah, I was able to be observed, and my silly patterns were able to be observed in treatment, you know. And I think when you're working with someone that's climbing out of hell, man, it's not going to be a fucking linear process that you can do over a few phone calls or a few. I think it needs to be a bit more radical than that, you know. And I think it can be done for a fraction of the price that we're doing it for a month at the moment. You know, that place I went, a month, I reckon you could have someone in an environment like this for a year for that type of money, and that would be them being, you know, that's paying the people that are creating that environment a wage that's okay, you know. I mean, yeah.
So in an ideal world, obviously, I know that I don't think we've discussed it, but I think obviously this project is not going to be in Scotland. But let's stick with the UK for a second, for the sake of this question. Would you like to see in an NHS subsidization for something like this? Do you think that this is something that is feasible to create these kind of spaces where, like, a synergy between the community of people like yourselves, of practitioners that have developed these skill sets, that have firsthand learned this, that have been around the world and experienced and understood how this operates, and the people who have gone and got the degrees that can then meet the insurance criteria, the study criteria, etc., and create, rather than just these pharmaceutical companies and these huge for-profit conglomerates stepping into this space and using synthetic drugs that they can then patent, able to create these connective spaces. Like, I mean, Oregon has just licensed like the first kind of mushroom cultivations and facilities, and they're getting on with licensing for these kind of spaces that you're speaking of. So I think the frameworks are starting to work. Do you think that it's feasible? It could work, you know, obviously not under current conservatives, but, you know, if something dramatic happens politically and there was the will.
I mean, for me, and I'm maybe biased on this, but I think the NHS is broken in every way a health system can be broken at the moment. And you know, and my evidence for that is that, you know, as somebody who was presenting to various factions of said health service from a very, very young age with clear emotional difficulties, it wasn't until my family heaped up some money when I was in my early 30s to finally address what had been going on for me. And even still, that was a private organization I was in for a short period of time. And then it was actually a volunteer-led organization that kept me on the straight and narrow for the years that came after that. It was nothing to do with the NHS. The NHS don't have an answer for this. My experience of working in my experience of being in the NHS is that there's some of the most unhealthy people running these hospitals. I mean, by looking at them, I can tell that they're really unhealthy. They're really sad. They're emotionally fucking strained in a whole bunch of ways, and they're soothing a whole bunch of and I mean, I'd love to see some government. I'd love to see some public funded work and collaboration. Absolutely, collaboration between this model and that model. Absolutely, but I don't think in the way that things are set up at the moment, I don't want to pay any tax towards that personally.
No, I can respect your answer and understand that. I'm unfortunately in a very similar position. I've been fucked over by the health service for the vast majority of my life, been still fighting with it currently. But the only reason I guess I defend it out of principle, the conceptual idea of what it is and should be, not what it has been made to be under fucking 15 years of conservative rule.
Infrastructure, we have this infrastructure, if you like, the surgeries and the fucking hospitals and all of this kit to have an amazing health service. We really do. We really do. And we could probably downsize it massively once we actually start focusing on fucking health. And
if you start,
with diet and fitness and all these things that
just pause the influence of the pharmaceutical companies. Yeah, exactly that, and just put the prescription pad down a second and go, right, how are you living? Tell me 24 hours in your life. How do you sleep? How much do you work? What's your family unit like? Where do you live? What's your income? There's a billion
infrastructure for so many things. Yeah. We have wonderful infrastructure. Some of the infrastructure in this country is hundreds of years old and looks really beautiful. There's some great infrastructure there. It's probably not how we design cities if we were going to design them today, but I mean, things can be changed. There's buildings that we've got for educating kids. Great. Maybe we need to shake things up a little bit. And particularly now with the, schools are going to be the epicenter for all of this stuff showing up that is inevitably showing up now, that these damaged, addicted parents who've now been exposed to fucking mobile phones have now inflicted on their kids, because the generation that are coming are even more disconnected in that way. And I don't mean that they're not connected to language and to all of those other things, but their brains have come online in an environment that does not support its natural development in a way that has never been seen on planet Earth that we know of. And that's what we as grown men now need to prepare ourselves for. We need to find the wisdom to hold that type of shit that's going to come up from our kids and our grandkids, and be the elders that we never had. I mean, how difficult, what a fucking task, but also what an amazing task to be it. So rather than doing everything right now, which is what I've always prevented me from starting anything proper like that, and all the weight down that I wasn't, but becoming a good old geezer is totally achievable. I can do that. I can be this. I've got another 20 years to work through these things. I don't need to do it right now. I'm in the process of doing it, and I'm creating an environment that optimizes that. But I've got time to do it. The war is over in my body. I'm not at war with my body anymore. I'm recovering, and that's the most radical thing we could do. That and learning to plant our own food. I think that's anarchism. Somebody said that, and I love it. And not everybody has the opportunity to do that at this present time, but that's where our wonderful technology comes in. You can have people doing all sorts of stuff.
I mean, we're facing an AI revolution that's gonna make banking jobs, fucking legal jobs, fucking anything that is memory, repetition, regurgitation disappear. I mean, even me as a writer, I'm probably facing the chopping block unless my content is somehow unique enough that it can't be replicated by AI, which is kind of what I'm working on. But again, the system is adapted to that, and instead of those people being liberated and free to go and to do things of meaning, they are now cast on to unemployment. They are to become the next generation homeless. They are to become the vagrants, the vagabonds, the burden upon society. It's such a bullshit system. Our technology is not liberating us. This was the promise of Henry Ford and the fucking assembly lines. It was, oh, we're improving human automation so you can work less hours and you can have more of your life. And look what the fuck happened there. The fight we had to get the weekends and the caps of fucking working hours. And I mean, God bless the French. Look at what they're doing, rebelling against the raising of retirement age. Like, we have enough people and enough technology that no one needs to really work full time at fucking anything other than if your drive is the acquisition of wealth and wealth alone. Obviously, yeah, people level up their lives, so then your mortgage costs X, Y, Z, and your bills cost X, Y, Z. And I get that mechanism; it's very easily done. But if the basis was for everybody to be on the base level of Maslow's hierarchy and to truly have all of their base needs met, not met through some communist, socialist forcement of tax this, put that there, remove the need for them to want to take all of that value and resource from these people. There's only a limited resource. I mean, it's literally like, I would suppose pitch here fucking, have you heard about the Venus Project? Jacques Fresco came up with it, an American designer and guy, really interesting bloke. And he basically came up with the idea of a resource-based economy. You take a look at whatever everything is, calculate how much of every mineral, every resource, all the water, everything that replenishes, everything that doesn't. You calculate how many people there are, the dietary needs, you just work all of the fucking math. And then go, there's the base, there's where you start. Anything on top of that, as long as that base is always met, and it works in a linear calculation, so obviously including deaths and births, etc. So it adjusts. We have unbelievable excess, so much excess that people are living like the Jetsons. Do you know what I mean? It's just that we have pockets of, there's a sheikh over there that's got $1 trillion hidden. Or, like the tax census in America has apparently just revealed a billionaire they didn't know they had. There's these people hiding. I mean, there's the Paradise and the Panama Papers, and that was something like, 20-something trillion in assets that they discovered that were hidden by politicians and royal people and whatever. And you're like, wait, you can't afford to continue the 20 extra quid you were giving them during COVID for universal credit people, even though your own studies said that it benefited people and boosted the economy because there's not enough money. But then there's, how much was it? Like 700 billion was fucking given through other means to fucking private corporations and business. That system is not broken. It's operating exactly as it's meant to, because those people believe that is what good is doing. There's big numbers on the screen. It's good. We're making profit. Profit is good. Profit is antithetical to, not to human nature, but it's okay. I'll retract that statement. That wasn't very thought out. Profit.
What do you think started it?
I think this can be maybe a controversial take. I think Graham Hancock's probably onto something. I think there was a cataclysmic global event that kind of reset human society and the global economies and the trade that was happening and everything else. And we lost a lot of the written. We didn't really have the written word as we kind of knew it. Everything that it was produced with clearly didn't survive any of these records of this time period. And I think that then modern humans are piecing shit back together, and some of us are smarter than we fucking should be. In fact, I think that we all are collectively, but some people almost have access to stuff that they shouldn't know about because we've already done it. Do you know what I mean? And we're sort of rebuilding this. And I think in that, some of those smart people figured out that if I keep these other people dumb, I'm God. And it was basically, I think it was Jesus and Christianity. I think it was when they were actually able to reset the global calendar for the West. That was when the power dynamic was done, because there was no history. That's zero. That's anything below zero. It's gone. It's like they reset history, and they got to build it on a monotheistic. So you were talking before about we used to worship nature. If you look at, say, the British and what's supposed to be continental Europeans now, they were nature worshippers for an incredible amount of period of time, all very, I suppose, modern and termable pagans. And then they started ancestral worship. And then somehow ancestral worship is just cut off, especially you see it in the Dark Ages in the UK, and then it's replaced with monotheistic religions. So all of these pockets of beliefs and worshipping of the land, and then it became of ancestors as a way to it was almost like oral memory. So you honor your grandfather who did XYZ, so you remember that if we do XYZ, it's good for the tribe. In the same way, mythology is hidden inside Christianity and other religions, that is basically just science in some ways and moral tales. And I think, again, some people just figured out that shit, and they denied others the written word for so long. They created these hierarchical structures of kingdoms and fiefdoms and built these systems. And the technology just kept evolving, but there's never really been especially in this country, there's never really truly been a revolution. The French had a revolution, and that was still co-opted by the systems because of the fucking world wars and all of the other shit that occurred. I suppose we had a hand to play in that as well as the English. But yeah, I think that it comes from that, and we're losing touch with God and spirit in that sense, or the idea of archetypal God, the man in the sky, or the archetypal figures sort of thing. But the idea of spirit, we're all eager to connect with.
If God is inside, and the essence of trauma is a disconnection from ourselves, then we're essentially disconnecting from the God.
And I think that's what religion figured out, is they co-opted chanting, meditation, like modern Christianity, or European Catholicism, with the imagery, the shapes of the buildings that would then sort of deal with sound and chanting and clapping and noise, and people would, like, say, resonate and feel this deep connection with each other, and that feeling would give them sort of giddy and, I suppose, almost like a psychedelic experience, that then people want to come back to it, and they think about it all week, and like, yeah, we go to church on Sunday. And church lost that in some ways over time. It just lost this celebration aspect. Obviously a lot of the offshoots of Christianity, kind of, some of them are really quite dour and negative about it. Some of them are very like, hey, go Jesus, and it's all their interpretations of the Bible and shit. And again, I think that the Bible was correlated together by the historic record of people around, and it was kind of mythologized and sanitized through numerous conquests. The Romans, various other groups that took over different sects and brought in their religious beliefs, like moving Christmas to the 25th of December and shit to align with, like, after the winter solstice, and all of these different absorptions of all the proto-religions, and as a way of mass control. And then once you kind of get people to disconnect them as God, or experiencing God in themselves, they have to go to a church. The gatekeepers, the church becomes the gatekeeper to the religious, the profound, the godly experience. I mean, I don't like using the word God because it's a loaded term, but I believe that there's one thing of Christians that I think they say is true. If lift a stone, you will find me. Was it break a branch and I'm there, or whatever it is. I think the energy of life, that is God to me. The thing that is immeasurable beyond, we've calculated all of the mass, we've calculated even like dark matter and dark energy and all these other things that we can quantify and come up with. There's still something else, that essence of life. It's the reason I guess I'm a vegan. Do you know what I mean? Is that I that's special in every form, whether it's a tiny little fucking flea or an ant or what. It's all, there's something in it that's more to it. It's more than the carbon that makes it up. It's more than the blood, the vessels, the organs.
I can understand someone's decision to be vegan. I was watching a documentary yesterday or the day before, Hadza tribe, and there's this guy from the Hadza tribe. You ask him a bunch of questions, actually. What's the most important thing in life, and he says meat. Meat, and then he goes, oh, and honey, meat and honey. I think to myself, yeah, man. And these guys have their microbiome is studied. It's the most amazing microbiome found in humans.
They're eating local. They're connected to that environment through.
So many different things, they're just all the time just so connected to where everything comes from.
Yeah, and that's the thing about it. I think that almost the proteins are relevant. The proteins are relevant. Yeah, the proteins are relevant whether it comes through an animal or whether it's from the plant form. It's about that eating local without glyphosate and all these other fucking Western, I was going to say, penetrations of nature. That was a very sexual imagery, but these violations of nature by the corporate machine to improve profit and yields, that's where I think that the harms are coming. So I don't begrudge anyone that has a carnivore lifestyle diet. I'm not allowed vegan. I am vegan. Whatever anybody else does outside of me, I'm not in control of. I'm barely in control of me. Do you know what I mean? I'm humble enough to recognize there's some things I shouldn't speak on. I speak on drugs because everyone I've spoke to that's worth speaking to and knowing and has actually experienced these things comes to the same goddamn conclusions. I've lived 2+ decades of this. I've never been more sure of anything in my life, and still I try and check myself and be like, but that's my opinion, that's what I think, and if I'm factually right and I can prove and pull out the figures or whatever, I'm gonna fight that fight. But the whole the dietary thing, it's your choice. I'm fighting for freedom. And the ideal world that I'd want to live in is everything that you would need is almost in your 15-minute city, but you would be in no fucking way forced or observed, surveilled, coerced to conform with that in any which way against your wants. If you wanted to then go further than that, you should be, of course, allowed, not just allowed, encouraged. Like, we can make air travel far less polluting. We can make mass transit far less polluting. We can, all of these systems can be regenerated and revolutionized and changed. But the problem is, and I think the resistance to it is then logically, as they were going, oh, let's remake mass transit. They could do it in a way that it could be free. Oh, fuck, we've just ruined the rail industry. You know, let's redo healthcare. Oh, we've just done that to the best of our ability, which means, yeah, we don't need the pharmaceutical company. Sorry, lads. Do you know, and I think that's what they're resisting against, is they'd rather have the crumbling limited infrastructure and outsource the bits that they can make profitable and pick the carcasses of these institutions apart than actually look at it and go, you know what, the best thing for us to meet our climate goals is to just make everything better. Is to actually just make it better. You know what would give millions of people employment and skills and actually do you know what the best thing to do? Physical labor jobs. It's one of the things that is not really fucking that is healthy as fuck to a certain degree. Overwork of that really fucking bad. But there's a healthy fucking medium of activity and of strength training, resistance training that there's a lot of evidence now that is showing to be massively beneficial for your long-term development. I think like males start to lose, what is it, nearly 1% of muscle mass post 40. Do you know what I mean? So if you're not then engaging in these things, or have engaged in your youth, you haven't created this resistance to it, and your body just degrades and you fall off and die. Whereas I think that the youth, almost like as a national service, should be rebuilding the national infrastructure. Fuck, I'll volunteer for that as well. Do you know, like literally we could rebuild all of the fucking roads, rewire all of the infrastructure. Like everything is going to need re-fucking done. Our homes are carcinogenic because of the fucking concrete, let alone you want to talk about the paints, you want to talk about the fucking lacquers and the oils and shit that we put in. You then want to talk about the fucking asbestos. You want to talk about the lead in the water pipes. You want to like most of the wiring. You look at now the technical regulations are so unlawful that you have to gut the buildings to rewire them for safety because the fire hazards. You know, we're having to spend tens of millions insulating inferior buildings that are still then leaching energy. Why not literally just rebuild the entire... We've got 1% of land built on. Do a 10-year program in this country where we just build everything like an inch to the left. We just build a whole new of everything just there. You know, Birmingham, you just move to this side, Shep, move there, and you just re-fucking build it. It sounds like utopian or whatever, but I can't think of anything better to do as a national infrastructure project. Globalization is collapsing. We're seeing that. The fact that I say globalists, that's a controversial term these days, but like your global corporate individuals, like as we were describing before, these multinational individuals that, you know, jet set off and go on holiday in Dubai here and do this and do whatever, they're starting to even become consciously aware of their impact and what's happening and the impending sort of tax systems and restrictions. So there is an appetite amongst everybody, I would say, to want to see a different fucking world, man. And it is, as you say, possible. We have the resource. We have more than enough people. But people, like I said, are so disconnected from, I'm not going to help you. NIMBYing, I don't want that in my backyard. I don't want to see, you know, rehabilitation centers. I don't want to see a fucking prison or this or that or that. Prisons are shitholes, but you get my point. We have to retrain people to want to be around people. Whereas the main drive of people in this country is get a really big house so you can have a really big gate and a long drive and high fences and no one can see you and you have your own little island world, and you drive around your big giant car above everybody else, and it's a separation. And I think it's it's a response to anxiety. We're overstimulated and we're anxious, constantly measuring ourselves against everybody else, going, I need more money, more money, more money. And the rising inflation in food and housing insecurity, job insecurity, fuck, air insecurity, if we keep going into this goddamn race. You can understand why then people have that reaction of it's like the apocalypse suddenly happened and we're all raiding the supermarket. That's what I feel is happening. We're being triggered by the mainstream media, by the fear-driven machine, by Facebook and everything else that, again, is driven by negative clicks and algorithms that preface hatred, divisional language, and that kind of clickbait bullshit over the constant reminders that we are human. We are all one shitting, smiling, curious little species, regardless of what separates us. We're still just smart monkeys, two smart monkeys.
Yep. My logo is I have this logo for stickers and bullshit, and it's a little monkey.
I do appreciate that every time I see that, yeah. But that's what I feel like. I don't know whether it's that a new kind of.
I remember cooking ayahuasca in the jungle and realizing that was when things dramatically changed for humans when the pot came along and they started doing extractions from plants. Things changed.
Well, yeah. I think imagine think of a cat's response to catnip. Like, I'm thinking, like, we kind of had sort of responses to these things of going through nature, just trial and error of everything, because you would have just assuming, well, got to try some shit. Some people die, some people get high, everyone recounts their experiences, and people go, all right, keep an eye on this one. We like this one. And then some people get brave, and then it's just the psychonauts of old that kind of went, all right, I'll take the full thing. All right, so we don't drink the full bowl, lads. All right. And you learn by doing, and it's that tradition of lived experience and the willingness to participate in that, I think, again, is a curiosity lost to modern humanity, to just do the stupid thing, not necessarily the reckless thing or the illegal thing, but to just do the stupid thing, to just be curious, to just engage, and I think there needs to be safe space for that as well, because for all we can create these shamanic type spaces, these retreats, these areas, especially young people, young fucking teenagers, that you can't tell them right from fucking wrong, and they're not aware of trauma enough themselves to be aware of what they've been imprinted with or programmed with. They're still going to do what I did and others did, and at free parties go, well, if 2 makes me feel good, 3's really going to make me feel good, so I wonder what 4 does. That's still going to occur no matter what we do, whether it's through criminalization, education. I think that is hardwired into the youth to test the tribe. I think that the tribe naturally becomes conservative in terms of, not politically conservative here, but I mean, they go like, oh, we settle here, we've got resource, we've got what we need. But I think then the mechanism of the youth through that cycle is to challenge the wisdom of the old, obviously onboard it, but then through their challenging of it, forward it, advance it. And
the dysfunction from the lack of wisdom in the tribe is showing up in the youth anyway. So, I mean, it makes sense that the lack of healthy brain development of the youth drives the way the tribe goes. We're running riot away from it at the moment because there's no wisdom. There's no wisdom in any system in which it's essential that we have wisdom.
The economy of information. This is what digital technology has done to us. It's the birth of the internet. Suddenly we had not necessarily everything, but people were answering questions, and it was people wanted to share information in a way. And then big tech sort of naturally evolved out of any capitalist system and began to conglomerate and to own and censor and create these algorithms that maintain these echo chambers and these small spaces. And we're drowning in information, drowning in it, saturated in it. We can't breathe for it. Yet, like you said, there is no wisdom. Because people become wise based on the information they have access to. And so if you get stuck in one echo chamber, one algorithmic, suggestive cookie collective bullshit of internet access for a lifetime, you will master what you have been presented. Somebody else will master what there is no, the universal truth has been lost in the digital realm. A book is a book. That's why I love physical books. It's one of the only physical mediums I'll still buy. You can't sneak into my house and edit that and censor it and change it, or sell a different copy in a different region, or have an alternative ending in Spain than you do in fucking Norway or whatever. You can't doctor it in. It's solid. It's defined. It's an artifact held in time.
Yeah.
And this digital information, people then outrage and respond to a Facebook comment, and then somebody goes in and edits the comment, and suddenly you've reacted to something else benign, and it lacks permanence, therefore it lacks meaning. This is what I think I like about psychedelics, is that there is the fear of consequence, the potential of consequence. Like I said, that those near-death experiences means, I guess, is one of the reasons why I have potentially, allegedly, a proclivity to enjoying cars moving fast. It's an adrenaline. You are connected. You're in charge of that shit. Well, to a certain lesser extent, I suppose, with psychedelics. But you are engaged. You have created that environment. You have decided that dose. You've decided your brain. You've worked out. If you're doing it correctly, I would say you're working through that day consciously, of thinking of the things kind of you want to deal with, not introducing new stimuli or stress, eating the right things in the right sort of way and preparing for it. And so it's that level of control. And then I suppose it's the comfort of surrender in the psychedelic experience, but it's still, in a way, I think it's a mastery. It's you versus you. Do you know what I mean? It's you versus you, but not in a I'm gonna fucking kill you. It's me and you will spar and get better,
Yeah. So that thing you were talking about, that Joseph Campbell talks about that. The sort of myths and stories and legends in which a community will sort of tell around the fire. The stories of wisdom. Accumulate over very slow changes in the environment, in our environment. I mean, our environment was always the essence of trauma is when you take an organism that has a symbiotic sort of equilibrium relationship with its environment and move it somewhere else. Mm-hmm. And that's why the Graham Hancock fucking nonsense makes sense, because certainly if something hit the planet, then there would be a tribe of humans that were annihilated. There would have been tribes that were running for their lives, heavily traumatized, away from their land in a completely different place, where they wouldn't be able to reflect back who they were, and they wouldn't have rituals and songs that connected them with the plants and the land that they were on. They would be completely disconnected from that. But Joseph Campbell says that the society now is moving just too fast for us to create any sort of story that we can sort of pin down, and to sort of stop the bus and go, right, okay, stop here, and then we can it's moving so much faster than human beings, and so we're just completely lost. We're completely disconnected from ourselves. And like you were saying with these medicines have the ability to disconnect us even further from ourselves, if they're not understood. If the type of environment that we're trying to recreate, the type of what we're actually trying to do with the brain in these spaces, I mean. Yeah.
I think we've covered quite a lot of ground there. I'm actually going to take a quick look at my notes, see if there's any speed questions before I move on to the last question.
I'm getting quite hungry. I'm eating nuts, so yeah.
You could do with some food. These two joints often leave me rather hungry. I think we've actually ended up covering the vast majority of these. You know what? Difficult that. Da, da, da. I suppose it's quite a short one. So in sort of what you're doing with, I suppose, ceremonies is the shortest way, I suppose, to describe it. Do you sort of holistic, like non-psychoactive techniques, sort of like yoga, fasting, meditation?
I mean, fasting, yoga, meditation are all parts of my life.
Mm.
And I'd say a huge part of what we are trying to do now is to create some sort of morning ritual with who we're working with, about how they approach changing the narrative of how they feel about themselves in those first moments of the day when they come online. That's
Mm.
that's a lot of the work that we're doing.
Yeah, man.
Sorry, what was the question again? I went off there.
No, I think you've sort of kind of answered it. I was saying, so do you incorporate these sort of into ceremonies that you were doing, and you said that yeah, you're trying to sort of
Another
work into
thing,
the morning ritual.
because that word ceremony is not a word that we use
Was
in our
using
school.
it as a
We use the space.
colloquialism.
We use the word session just because
Mm.
so many other people bring their own baggage of what the word ceremony means, and you know, people bring their own ceremony, their own ritual. You know, they might prepare with diet, they might prepare with cutting things out of their life, and you know, we'll be in communication about that prior to that. Um, you know, and they might be extending that part. You know, that's the ceremony that they're bringing, because that's the stuff that you do when nobody's looking, right?
Mm-hmm.
We certainly treat the space with a hell of a lot of reverence. We inculcate reverence in the space. I mean, it's undeniable, and it's trauma in everything that we do regarding that. Um, yeah.
Yeah, sounds awesome. So I suppose that in some way kind of I guess as I'm taking an insinuation of that as to what you'll probably answer this question to be. What are your thoughts on people self-terming, sort of claiming or proclaiming themselves shamans?
Master Sun said, "A grandmaster never calls himself a grandmaster." And that's my first egoic response to that. I I have some experience that might be the experience that helps someone else, and in that respect, for them, I am their shaman because I'm showing them the way. I suppose people who, and it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. You know, about people who are practicing with these medicines, embodying the change that's required to work with these medicines. You're constantly in change. You're constantly being shown parts of your subconscious that you maybe weren't ready for 3 or 6 months ago, and having to improve and having to integrate and having to change, and you know, getting in control of your health and getting that relationship with nicotine finally out the way. And there's a whole bunch of ways in which you go through things. You know, the the waves and of having really good spells with your first 15 minutes of the day, and then having to sit in it for a month where you're not doing it so well, so that you can sit
Mm.
in that familiar drug again where you're not doing your life right, and then hammering it down again. And you know, it's a process.
Mm.
um it's a process, and I like spending time with people who are engaging in that process in my personal life, you know, and I certainly can help with people that are um, struggling to have that, and I can help them by that by explaining the struggles that I still have with it as well. You know, that's
Mm.
a big part of what we do. You know,
Mm-hmm.
just be real and honest about what we're doing and how we're feeling and how difficult it is. And you know, it's not easy to climb out of hell, because every now and again, you know, life will happen and it'll kick you back into that state, you know. And if you're
Mm-hmm.
not equipped You know,
Yeah, man.
yeah. So I mean, each to their own. It's a great word. It's a very descriptive word. I like it. You know, I have some people in my life that I would call a shaman, and I've had the pleasure to work with a couple of these women that were just, you know, embodied the word.
Mm.
And you know, I aspire to be someone with a little bit of wisdom. You know, that's the goal in life. That's the meaning of life, really. Of a life is to be part of a collective system, a community that optimizes the children's brain development so that our species continues. That's the meaning of life. And that's what I want to be and embody. And that requires me to be there and witness others' pain. You know, that requires me to be in that role sometimes. And it just so happens that because of my experience and because of the way I came through recovery, you know, of holding space in meetings, and it just sort of felt like a space that I wanted to be in, and to share my own journey through it, because I understand that it's the sharing of the journey that allows the people who are struggling on their next part of the path, you know. It's just somebody that's further down the path explaining their struggles. That's all it is, you know. And yeah. So, I mean, I'd be it's one of those words that it stirs up. Some if somebody describes to me, you know, and they're sitting there in a pair of Nikes, and you know, their skin's white, they've got a couple of dreadlocks and that, and they're telling me they're shaman, I'm gonna laugh inside, and that's just my automatic response. It'll be really bad of me, but that's the human.
No,
It's I know lots of people that facilitate medicine space really well, you know. And what that means is, for me, is that they create an environment in the present that's safe for old wounds to come up, and be heard and seen, and there's lots of people doing that good work, you know. And some of them call themselves shaman. They know what that care looks and feels like, and some of them don't. And then there's just a bunch of people that are putting Enya on and giving people a high dose of psychedelics and going, you know, and 80% of the time, people are having a great experience, but that's when the people are slipping through the net, and that's really unsafe in any practice. And yeah.
I think
I suppose the work is trying to avoid that, trying to for me, trying to look at an environment that optimizes that not happening. That's kind of my work, you know. What type of environment for using these medicines can we create that optimizes their potential fully, but also prevents people from having psychotic breaks, or if yeah.
Or having the space to deal with one should it occur, sort of thing, a realism and a reactionary response to it. Yeah. No, I think you're quite right. I always think of the Terence McKenna quote of, you know, follow plants, not gurus, and that's why I always I can't help it. I know a part of it's my trauma of my own sort of issues with confidence and the way I kind of present myself. You know, you put me on stage talking about a subject I'm very well versed in, I'll own that room. But you put me in a room, in a space where those people think I'm a druggie, and I can't win them over, and I've got nothing. I can't kind of deal with that situation, and I've often found that the people that present and have that ability for that facade, that will, you know, in the wrong attire, as it were, in the wrong situation, announce themselves to be a guru or a fucking shaman or a this or a that. It sends off warning bells of going, well, no, this is cosplay, because if you were this, I would know this without you telling me this. Do you know what I mean? There's a reverence, I think, is a wonderful word that you used before that describes it. Like, I've been lucky enough to meet a practicing Buddhist monk previously in the past, and there is an aura, an energy, whatever term you want to use to describe, and calmness that like evaporates from them, not evaporates, it like exudes from them that you can't help but be caught up in. There is, and that's what people speak of when they've met these sort of great people that have that humility. They would never proclaim themselves to be X, Y, and Z. Many people think of them as X, Y, and Z, but they've earned that title. They've earned that moniker,
Yeah.
All right, I'm quite aware of the time actually. Just thinking this is the first one back. Don't want to launch it into too much of a 3-hour tirade for the audience. So I think what we'll do for now, until I've had a chance to come up and we'll have a catch up on things, and we'll see where the world advances, because things are moving pretty fast. So I'd like to very much get you back on the podcast later on in the year, if maybe even from new location as you're starting to settle in. Would love to hear how things are progressing and kind of what you're learning. And
I'm gonna have some olive oil this year. Own olive oil.
See, that again, that's it, being able to have those basic luxuries. I keep seeing these memes of going, you get old when you get excited by like a clean dish sponge. That sort of thing. And it's like I'm getting to that point where actually, I appreciate when I've done something and then the next day I go to it and it's clean, or I've done, it's like, thank you. Thank you. And then every time I go lazy on something, I go, tomorrow me's going to be pissed. Got to do that work. So, yeah. Again, I think that's some of the forms with, again, the psychedelic experience of, it strengthens that voice. There's always the voice in you that people call it your conscience, whatever you want to fucking call it, but there's something in you that knows what's right for you. It's a little kid again. He's shouting, and the guy on the autopilot's not listening.
The gut is what knows what's good for you. Because, I mean, we can it gets destabilized like any other system after a prolonged period of time, but it's the apparatus that we reconnect with the body with, for sure. And Gabor says where there's tension, there needs attention. And the distractions that we all jump away in are our inability to pay attention to those feelings. And that's what drove them initially when we were children. And that is the work as adults. And medicine's great for helping with that. But as we spoke about, it's the framework afterwards that's critical. It's critical. And yeah, what a fun place to be in discovering this. I'm really excited about what's going to happen this year. It's like, right, a fun place to be. Evolving this environment, in the head. What's it going to be like? Because it's going to be hard work, but it's good. It's good. Full spectrum human work. It's varied. It's a whole bunch of things. It's good for the soul, good for the hands, good for the body.
Yeah.
Who needs a gym, right?
Yeah, it's like you say, it's full spectrum rehabilitation of like the human spirit, body, consciousness, diet. It's the best opportunity that I can think for an individual to really address a lifetime of trauma, because it compounds. It all compounds until addressed, and that's why it gets so messy in session, I guess. Is some people carry it for a lifetime, and someone's lifetime is a lot longer than others.
And often we find that there's about 40 or 50 different addictions, and so we go into a treatment centre and they'll like say, right, you need to stop these 3 or 4, but then the other ones eventually pop up and people relapse because they're not getting well, they're not getting into their microbiome, they're not getting that system rebooted, they're not getting this system rebooted, that system rebooted. They're back in the place that created them, that they were anesthetizing themselves from, because they've not got the tools to change that. It's like, yeah, let's give them those. Let's stop giving people fish and give them a fucking fishing rod. Do you know what I mean? Literally.
100%, brother.
Yeah. Okay, man.
So I suppose,
I'm gonna go and have some food.
Yeah, man. I was going to say that answers what would be the normal last question that I have on the podcast, which is, what does the future hold? And I think you've pretty concisely articulated that over this podcast, man. And I wish you all the best with this. Obviously, we'll bump into each other at some point this year. I'm sure we'll make that happen. And yeah, we'd definitely love to have you back on again in the near future. So all the best, man.
Speak to you soon, man.
All right. Peace and love, brother. I'll let you sign off. I'll do some housekeeping.
Okay.
All right. Peace. Well, there we go, folks. That was Echo's Pat. Not going to obviously give you his real name by the nature of the work that he does. Yeah, I hope you guys got a bit of an insight into the kind of underground world, the legacy space of these plant medicine practitioners. They're using classic, I suppose, psychedelic, entheogenics, more kind of the term that's being used these days in academic and sort of scholastic practice. So that's generally kind of the term that I try and stick to. But colloquially, obviously, psychedelics, you know what I mean when I'm saying it. But basically, working with these compounds with people and having truly life-changing experiences. I will sit here all day long. Anyone that knows me will know I will attest to the power of these substances. And I've never done sort of group work. Something I've, as I expressed sort of in the podcast there, something I'm quite curious of and interested in. And as me and Pat have discussed, possibly something could be facilitated. So interesting. I will report back with my findings. But yeah, I enjoyed that. Didn't really need much of my big old notes for the day. I think we covered everything that I kind of wanted to. Definitely going to keep an eye on this project, how he evolves with it, what happens. Hopefully we'll be able to reveal kind of where, at least what country it's going to be in at some point, and give you a bit more info. There are many people working in this space that are doing similar things all over the world. Obviously, as the US now comes on board, we're seeing a lot more happen with, you know, licensing and regulation and production, even in Canada as well. Actually, there's a company just been approved for licensing and selling of cocaine. So these markets are moving thick and fast. The prejudice is starting to fall in various regions as people start to understand that not just entheogenic drugs have potential benefit. Obviously, it's an interesting intersection that a lot of the people that are promoting plant medicines are people who struggled with dependency with chemical substances, things like heroin, cocaine, amphetamines, etc. The ones that I feel that are doing the most work, the most humble, the individuals, I guess, as we intimated towards at the end of that podcast, are the ones that recognize that all things have value and merit in some form, in some way. Obviously, they can be problematic use, they can be dependent use, they can be issues with everything, but to criminalize these individuals is not the answer. So I think, for all I disagree with what's happening with a lot with the investment, the creation of novel synthetic compounds such as psilocin that is being patented by various pharmaceutical companies, it's promoting a wider awareness that individuals like this in the underground can start to give people access to change their lives, to better themselves, to create wiser humans that are capable of great compassion, are capable of great works and feats that benefit us all. I don't mean in some sort of martyristic kind of way of killing themselves, destroying themselves for some idealistic goal or terrorism. That's not what I'm implying there. I don't know why I'm covering this as a caveat. But those people that are motivated for real meaningful change, I think it's the bringing together of all of the people that are truly capable and want to do that change, that have done the work on themselves to understand their traumas, their triggers, their deficits, their excess needs and wants and drives in life, to be able to work out exactly what the fuck we do, what ology, what ism, what system it is that collectively humanity can live under, where we're not destroying each other, where we're conscious of each other's needs, of our experiences, to be mindful that everybody is as complex as you, as feels things as deep as you, lives as much on the edge as you. You know, they are you, just in a different wrapper. There you go. That's my philosophy for this week. Do check out, I'm writing it now, so it'll probably be, I'm releasing this actually tomorrow, I'm guessing. I don't even know what fucking day it is. This week I'll be releasing the first of the trip report, where I'll be covering actually 3 stories in a new bi-weekly, so that's fortnightly, not bi-weekly, I guess it's twice a week, isn't it? It's a fortnightly blog series talking about sort of psychedelic culture and the industry. So yeah, today was a good episode to kind of introduce that as well. Obviously continuing to do the Last Week in Weed series, which will be available weekly, typically on a Monday as I try and get around to it. Obviously I'm a bit on the road with events and various things. Yeah, I should be posting more on social media and shit over the next few weeks as I try and get back into the saddle. Like I said, mental health has been a bit meh recently. But yeah, I'm going to be here to try and be as honest and open with you folks as possible, bring you the best guests as possible, and have the most informative and curiosity-inducing conversations that we're capable of here at the Simpa Life. So that being said, if you enjoyed this, please do give us a like, share, and subscribe. Please do check us out on patreon.com/Simpa Life, where you can help me pay for this lovely new camera that does this. And if anyone knows how I stop it doing this, tell me so I can turn it off because it's annoying me. Yeah, check us out on all social media platforms. Check out the new website, simpalife.com. New blogs added weekly, new articles added all the time. Be releasing another one about Gary Youds that's just gone live in Weed World magazine, so that'll be going live on the website as well. Check out Weed World as well. Really good publication. Recommend it. I'm obviously biased because I write for them, but yeah, it's all good. I'm gonna stop nattering. I'm gonna go eat some fucking food and go chill the fuck out. Hope you all have a wonderful day, evening, morning, whatever time of day it is that you're up to. Whatever you're up to, rather, have a beautiful day. Peace and love, folks.
We're going to be okay, man.
We'll get through this together.